Greetings, Lore Masters. Tonight, our chronicle covers the foundational steps every hero must take, the skills that separate the living from the dead in the harsh, unforgiving province of Skyrim. We aren't just looking at numbers on a screen. We are looking at the survival instincts required to navigate a land where the snow wants to freeze you, the wildlife wants to eat you, and the dragons want to burn you to a crisp. Imagine standing on the precipice of High Hrothgar, the wind biting through your furs, looking down at a world that is equal parts majestic and lethal. It is a world that demands mastery. Let's be honest, you probably wouldn't survive a trip to Bleak Falls Barrow with just a rusty iron dagger and a sweet roll in your pocket. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, why not drop a comment below telling me where you're listening from and what time it is in your corner of the world? I always love imagining the global campfire we're building here. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The story of the Dragonborn does not truly begin with a shout that shatters the sky. It begins much more quietly, usually with the rhythmic clang of a hammer against an anvil. We find ourselves in the sleepy hamlet of Riverwood, having just escaped the burning wreckage of Helgen. The air smells of pine needles and impending war. Your hands are likely still raw from the bindings, and the weapon at your hip, if you even have one, is likely a pitted iron sword scavenged from a dead Stormcloak or Imperial soldier. It is heavy, dull, and entirely insufficient for the trials ahead. This is where the first essential step on our journey lies, steelsmithing. It might seem mundane to start Legend with the art of metallurgy, but consider the context. Skyrim is a land of iron and stone. Iron is plentiful. You can find it in the craggiest rocks and the deepest mines. But iron is soft. It bends under the weight of a giant's club. It chips against the scales of a blood dragon. To rely on iron is to accept mediocrity, and in Tamriel, mediocrity is a death sentence. The steelsmithing perk is the very first constellation star you must light in the smithing nebulae, and it is arguably the most critical for the early game. It represents the transition from a desperate survivor to a burgeoning warrior. When you approach Alva's Forge in Riverwood, or perhaps War Maidens in Whiterun, you are greeted by the intense dry heat of the smelter. It's a sensory shock compared to the biting frost outside. The coals glow with a mesmerizing orange pulse, breathing in and out as the bellows pump air into the heart of the fire. Here, you learn the alchemical truth of Skyrim's metallurgy. Steel is not merely refined iron. In the lore of the Elder Scrolls, making steel requires corundum. This is a distinct departure from our own reality, where carbon is the key alloy. In Tamriel, corundum is a copper-coloured metal found in veins often near the snowline. It implies that the steel of Skyrim is something different, and something inherently stronger and perhaps slightly magical in its conductivity, given how well it takes enchantments later on. By unlocking steel smithing, you gain the ability to craft and, more importantly, effectively improve steel weaponry and armour. This is the core in-game fact that changes your trajectory. While anyone can swing a hammer, only those with the knowledge of the perk can improve steel items to their potential. Without it, you're merely scratching the surface of the metal. With it, you can take a standard steel sword and hone it on the grindstone until it is fine, superior, or eventually legendary. That difference in damage output is often the margin between slaying a bandit chief and being decapitated by one. There is a meditative quality to the smithing skill. Fans of the series have long debated the mechanics of this, specifically regarding the infamous iron dagger economy. In the early days of the Fourth Era, or at least the early versions of the game's release, blacksmiths across Skyrim were baffled by a sudden surplus of thousands of iron daggers. The Dragonborn would stand at a forge, manic look in their eyes, churning out useless knives by the gross to artificially inflate their skill. It's a funny image. The saviour of Tamriel acting as a wholesale cutlery factory, bankrupting local merchants who had no use for 500 shivs. While the divines, or the developers, eventually patched this to favour the crafting of more valuable items like jewellery, the memory of that grinding rhythm remains a staple of community folklore. It speaks to the obsession with mastery, the desire to bend the game systems to one's will. But let's step back from the mechanics and look at the lore. The ability to work steel is not just about damage, it's about culture. Steel is the standard of the Imperial Legion. It is the metal of the Companions. When you unlock this perk, you also gain the ability to craft bone mold armor if you venture to Solstheim, a technique derived from the Dunmer of Morrowind using processed resin and bone. You unlock the secrets of the Imperial stylistic choices. You are becoming a student of the world's martial history. One obscure lore tidbit that many overlook is the relationship between standard steel and Skyforged steel. Up on the windswept district of Whiterun, Yorland Greymane works the Skyforge, an ancient eagle-shaped construct that predates the city itself. He claims his steel is the best, and mechanically, Skyforged steel weapons deal the same damage as elven weaponry, which is a tier higher. However, they are still classified as steel. This means your humble steel smithing perk applies to them. If you join the companions and gain access to Yorland's work, that initial investment in the steel smithing perk allows you to temper Skyforged weapons to terrifying levels of sharpness early in your journey. You are wielding elf-slaying power with the material costs of common metal. It is an efficiency that a clever adventurer exploits immediately. Imagine the process. You take the raw ingots, heavy and cold. You heat them until they are malleable, the colour of a setting sun. You place them on the anvil, and with every strike you are shaping your destiny. You are folding the metal, removing impurities, creating a lattice of strength that will stand between your soft flesh and a Draugr's ancient Nord axe. The sparks fly in showers of gold, stinging your arms, but you don't flinch. You're the Dragonborn. You have dragons to shout at and sweet rolls to steal. You don't have time to worry about minor burns. This perk is also the gateway. It is the prerequisite for everything that follows. You cannot learn to work with dwarven metal, the lost science of the Dwemer, without first mastering steel. You cannot twist the delicate malachite into glass armour, or fold the heavy ebony without this foundation. It is the introduction to 101 of the crafting world. Skipping it is not an option for anyone who wants to wear anything sturdier than leather. Furthermore, consider the economy. We will discuss haggling later, but in the early hours of your adventure, gold is scarce. Buying a full suit of steel armour from a vendor is prohibitively expensive. Finding a matching set on corpses is unreliable, unless you enjoy the smell of dead bandit, which, let's be honest, probably lingers even after a wash. Crafting it yourself? That costs only the time it takes to mine the ore and the leather strips you tanned from the wolves that attacked you on the road. It turns the violence of the world into resources. The wolf that tried to bite your leg becomes the leather straps of your bracers. The mountain that blocked your path yields the ore for your breastplate. It is a harmonious cycle of violence and creation. There is a profound satisfaction in wearing armour you made yourself. When you step out of War Maidens clad in a full set of steel plate, the pauldrons gleaming in the pale Skyrim sunlight, you feel different. You walk heavier. The clanking sound of your greaves hitting the cobblestones is a warning to the world. You're no longer the prisoner in rags. You're a walking tank. You look at the guards who used to sneer at you, and you realise you're wearing the same quality gear as them, perhaps even better tempered. You have equalised the playing field. And let's not forget the weaponry. A steel sword, when properly made, has a beautiful balance to it. It's not as flashy as the Daedric weapons you'll find in the late game, which look like they were designed by a teenager going through a goth phase, but it has a classic utilitarian elegance. It's the weapon of a hero who does the work. So why is this the first essential perk? Because offense and defense are the binary stars of your survival. Before you can cast grand spells or shout mountains apart, you need to survive a bear attack on the road to Ivarstead. Steelsmithing gives you the tools to do that. It is the blue-collar magic of the mundane. It ensures that when you swing, you cut, and when you are hit, you don't break. It allows you to trust your gear, and in a world where gods and Daedra meddle in the affairs of mortals, trusting the steel in your hand is often the only comfort you have. As the sun sets over the Whiterun tundra, painting the sky in hues of violet and bruised purple, the fires of the forge die down. You wipe the soot from your brow, you have your weapon, you have your armour, you're ready to step out into the dark. But as any seasoned adventurer knows, armour can be pierced. And health is a fleeting resource. When the steel fails or the cold seeps too deep, you need a way to mend the vessel that carries your soul. You need to reach out to the light. Having forged your steel and donned your armour, you step away from the comforting heat of the smelter and out into the biting winds of the Skyrim tundra. The world is vast, beautiful, and deceptively peaceful. You might make it 10 steps, perhaps 100, before the reality of your situation sets in. Maybe it's a pack of wolves that encircles you near the Honningbrew Meadery. Maybe it's a skeever leaping from the tall grass with startling aggression. Or perhaps, in a moment of adventurous hubris, you attempted to shortcut down a mountain and discovered that gravity in Tamriel is a harsh mistress. The steel you forged protects you, yes, but the impact rattles your bones. The wolf's teeth find the gap in your greaves. You are bleeding. Your vision pulses with that telltale red vignette. This is where the hammer meets the flesh, and where the second essential star in your constellation must be lit: Novice Restoration. It is the most instinctual magic in the world. Every Dragonborn, regardless of race, birth sign, or background, wakes up in that cart knowing two spells: flames and healing. It's as if the universe itself understands that your existence is going to be painful, but here lies the trap for the uninitiated. The base, healing spell is a glutton for magicka. Without training, channeling that golden light is like trying to fill a cup with a fire hose. You spill more energy than you use. Your blue magicka bar drains in seconds, often running dry before your wounds have even begun to close. You're left standing there, one hand raised in a futile gesture while the bandit raises his axe for a finishing blow. Unlocking the Novice Restoration perk changes the physics of your survival. It cuts the magicka cost of novice-level spells by half. In the early game, where your magicka pool is likely a pitiful 100 points, this efficiency is not just a statistical bonus, it is the difference between life and death. It allows you to sustain the healing channel twice as long, knitting together twice as much tissue for the same mental cost. It transforms a panic button into a reliable survival tool. We must address the elephant in the College of Winterhold. You can't talk about this school of magic without hearing the voice of Colette Morant echoing in the halls, defensive and shrill. Restoration is a perfectly valid school of magic, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. It is one of the most enduring memes in the community. See, a line that every player has heard 100 times, but the tragedy of Colette is that she's right, and she's the only one who seems to realise that her colleagues are mocking the very thing that keeps them alive. The destruction mages might sneer at the healers, preferring to incinerate their problems, but when a fireball backfires or a Draugr Deathlord shouts them into a wall, who do they come crawling to? This disregard for restoration is actually a fascinating piece of world-building lore. In the academic circles of Tamriel, particularly within the Synod and the College of Whispers in Cyrodiil, magic is often judged by its ability to alter reality or exert power. Restoration is seen as passive, a servant's magic. It is the magic of priests and field medics, not true wizards. This bias is so deep-seated that in the history of the Elder Scrolls mechanics, the schools have been reshuffled constantly. Spells like Absorb Health were once considered restoration, the forceful taking of life force to replenish one's own, but were moved to destruction, or the now-defunct mysticism school in later eras. The mages of Tamriel seem uncomfortable with the idea that restoration can be aggressive, yet the lore tells a darker, more potent story. Restoration is not just about closing cuts, it is the manipulation of life energies. It is the school of magic most closely aligned with the Aedra, the ancestor spirits who gave of themselves to create the world. When you cast a healing spell, you're essentially channeling the creative force of the universe to reverse entropy. That is a heavy concept for a spell that just makes your health bar go up, isn't it? Furthermore, restoration is the bane of the undead. This is the core in-game fact that makes the Novice perk essential for your first dungeon dive into Bleak Falls Barrow. The Nords of Skyrim generally distrust magic. They call it clevercraft and view it with suspicion, a hangover from the Oblivion Crisis and the Great War. However, they have a begrudging respect for restoration. Why? Because Skyrim is infested with the walking dead. Draugr, skeletons, and dragon priests litter the landscape. Restoration spells like Turn Lesser Undead, a novice spell governed by this very perk, are not offensive in the traditional sense. They are anathema to the dark magic that animates the corpses. The golden light of restoration is literally the sun energy that burns away the necromantic bindings. Let's look at an obscure lore tidbit that reinforces this. Have you ever read the skill book Withershins? It's a dense little text found in the game that describes the difficulty of restoration magic. The author details how a healer must not only pour magicka into the wound, but must also mentally visualize the wound closing, the veins reconnecting, the skin knitting. It requires an intense, almost surgical knowledge of anatomy combined with unwavering focus. If your concentration slips, the spell fails. It implies that the Dragonborn, even with a Novice perk, is performing complex biological realignment in the heat of combat. You aren't just applying a magical band-aid, you are forcing the body to accelerate its natural time stream of healing. The community debate around restoration often centers on the paladin archetype versus the pure mage. Is restoration enough to carry a build? For years, players argued that restoration was underpowered because it lacked pure offensive capabilities until the Dawnguard expansion introduced Sunfire and Vampire's Bane. Before that, a restoration mage was a pacifist in a land of war. But the counter-argument, and one that supports taking this perk early, is the concept of tanking via health regeneration. If you can out-heal the damage per second, DPS of an enemy, you are invincible. You don't need to kill them quickly if they literally cannot kill you. This perk is the first step toward that immortality. Let's be honest though, in the real world, if you were attacked by a giant spider, you wouldn't calmly hold up your hand and wait for the warm fuzzies to fix the puncture wounds. You'd probably be screaming. And the healing process in Skyrim is suspiciously clean. There's no scar tissue, no setting of broken bones, no long rehabilitation montage where you learn to walk again. You just blast yourself with gold light and you're ready to sprint. It's a convenient fiction, but a necessary one. If we had to roleplay realistic recovery times, The Elder Scrolls V would be a game about lying in a temple bed for 6 months drinking broth. The audio design of Novice Restoration deserves a mention here. That shimmering, oscillating hum when the spell is active is designed to be soothing. It contrasts sharply with the crackle of fire or the sharp zap of shock magic. It's an audio cue that says, "You're safe, you are recovering." In the chaos of a dragon attack when the sky's falling and the guards are screaming, that sound is an anchor. It centers the player, so you have your steel smithing to prevent damage and your Novice Restoration to undo the damage that slips through. You are becoming a self-sufficient unit. You can fix your gear and you can fix your body. But there is a third pillar to survival in Skyrim, one that is often overlooked by the noble heroes who focus only on swords and sorcery. You cannot craft without materials, and you cannot learn new spells without buying tomes. The world of Skyrim runs on septims, and right now you are likely broke. You're carrying a backpack full of wolf pelts, garnet rings you pulled off a dead necromancer, and perhaps a few heavy iron battle axes that are slowing you down. You trudge into Whiterun, ready to offload your treasures, only to find that the local merchants are offering you insulting prices. Belethor at the general goods store looks at your pristine wolf pelt and offers you 3 gold pieces for it, then turns around and sells a jagged rotten apple for 5. It's infuriating. It's robbery. And it's the reason why your next step isn't about swinging a sword or casting a spell. It's about opening your mouth and getting what you're worth. The economy of Skyrim is a beast as formidable as any dragon. It can starve you out, preventing you from buying the potions, ingots, and spellbooks you need to progress. To conquer it, you need to sharpen your tongue as keenly as you sharpened your steel. You need to understand the art of the deal. The fire of the forge warms your skin, and the golden light of restoration mends your flesh. But there is a cold reality waiting for you in the bustling streets of Whiterun's Plains district. You are the Dragonborn, a hero of prophecy with the soul of a time-lost reptile. Yet you are currently standing in front of a counter, arguing with a Breton man about the price of a garnish. Belethor, the proprietor of the local general goods store, leans over the wood with a smile that doesn't quite reach his eyes. "Everything's for sale, my friend," he says, with that oily cadence that makes you want to check your pockets to ensure your wallet is still there. "If I had a sister, I'd sell her in a second." It is a line he repeats so often one begins to suspect he actually did sell a sister once, and this is his way of coping with the guilt. You place a garnet on the counter. It is flawless, deep red, pulled from the eye socket of a Draugr deep within a Nordic barrow. It should be worth a small fortune. Belethor offers you a handful of coins that wouldn't buy a loaf of bread. This is the economic violence of Skyrim, and it hits harder than a giant's club. This is why the third essential star in your constellation is Haggling. Found at the very base of the speech skill tree, Haggling is the grease that keeps the wheels of your adventure turning. Without it, the economy of Skyrim is rigged against you. The core in-game fact here is a brutal mathematical reality. Without investment in the speech tree, merchants will typically buy your items for about 1/3 of their value and sell items to you at 3 times their worth. It is a markup that would make a modern-day movie theatre concession stand blush. You're effectively paying a hero tax on every potion, every ingot, and every spell tome you purchase. In the early game, when you're scraping together gold for that first house or a critical piece of training, this inefficiency is crippling. Unlocking the first rank of haggling improves buying and selling prices by 10%. It sounds modest, doesn't it? A mere 10%. But in the world of compounding interest and bulk sales, it is revolutionary. Consider the loop we established in the first section. You mine ore, you forge daggers, and then you sell them. If you're selling hundreds of iron daggers to Yorland Greymane without the haggling perk, you are leaving a mountain of gold on the table. With the perk, that mountain becomes yours. It transforms your trash. The heavy dragon bones, the enchanted boots that don't fit, the endless supply of wolf pelts into a war chest. There is a distinct sensory pleasure to commerce in the Elder Scrolls. The sound of the gold, that heavy metallic cha-ching, is one of the most satisfying audio cues in gaming history. It represents potential. It represents freedom. But there is also a layer of obscure lore hidden in those coins. The currency of the Empire is the septim, stamped with the profile of Tiber Septim, the man who became a god. But did you know that in the deeper, more pedantic lore discussions, the weight of gold is a constant point of contention? In the game, a septim is weightless. You can carry 1,000,000 gold pieces and sprint up a mountain. However, lore books and logic dictate that gold is heavy. A single gold coin weighs roughly 1/3 of an ounce. A fortune of 100,000 septims would weigh nearly a ton. This implies that the haggling perk isn't just about arguing prices. It's about logistics. It's about credit, promissory notes, and the reputation of the hero. When you haggle, you aren't just saying lower the price, you're saying, I am good for it, I am the Thane, I am a safe investment. You are leveraging your social credit score in a world that usually only respects the edge of a blade. You're becoming a fixture of the community rather than a transient vagrant with a sword. The fan community has a complicated relationship with the speech tree. For years, a loud faction of min-maxers, players who optimize their characters for pure combat efficiency, argued that speech was a dump stat. Why waste a perk point on better prices when you can just clear another dungeon and loot more gold? Why talk to the merchant when you can put a bucket on his head? Yes, the infamous bucket exploit. Fans discovered early on that if you physically picked up a bucket or a kettle and placed it over a shopkeeper's head, breaking their line of sight, you could steal everything in the store without them noticing. It became a hilarious rite of passage, the Dragonborn, saviour of Nirn, robbing a blindfolded shopkeeper blind. But rely on the bucket, and you miss the point of the roleplay. The haggling perk validates the honourable playthrough. It allows you to play as a merchant warrior, a mercenary who knows their worth. It acknowledges that the Dragonborn is not just a killer, but a participant in society. Plus, let's be honest, putting a bucket on Belethor's head every time you visit Whiterun is funny the first time, but it ruins the immersion when you're trying to feel like a legendary hero. Heroes don't commit petty larceny with kitchenware. Heroes negotiate. Think about the practical application of this wealth. In Section 1, we forged steel. In Section 2, we learned to heal. But to improve that steel further, you need rare materials like quicksilver or moonstone, which are hard to find in the wild early on. You need to buy them. To improve your restoration, you need to buy the fast healing or close wounds spell tomes from Colette at the college, and she doesn't give discounts to students. The haggling perk effectively subsidizes your combat training. It means you can afford 5 training sessions per level with a master trainer, skyrocketing your skills in heavy armor or one-handed, simply because you got a better deal on selling those garnet rings. Furthermore, haggling is the prerequisite for the later merchant perk, which we will discuss in due time. But even as a standalone, that first point is the difference between poverty and comfort. It allows you to buy the breeze home in Whiterun much faster. Owning a home gives you a safe place to store your dragon bones and excess cheese wheels, because we all know you're hoarding cheese wheels. You don't need to eat 36 wheels of Edar cheese in the middle of a fight if you have a chest to put them in. There is also a subtle psychological shift that happens when you unlock haggling. You stop seeing loot as burden and start seeing it as capital. That heavy Dwemer strut weighing 25 pounds, without the perk it's junk. With the perk it's a down payment on a new helmet. You become a discerning scavenger. You start looking at the value to weight ratio of every item. Is this Nord mead worth carrying? No, it's 0.5 weight for 5 gold. But that potion of minor stamina? 0.5 weight for 30 gold. Take the potion, leave the mead. You're becoming an accountant of the dungeon, maximising your profit margins while dodging swinging axe blades. Let's not forget the sheer arrogance of the speech tree itself. Standing in front of a Daedric prince or a jarl requires confidence. While haggling is purely economic, it represents the Dragonborn finding their voice. You're no longer the silent prisoner in the cart listening to Rylef and Lokia talk. You're asserting your will upon the world. You're telling the universe, I have value, and you will recognise it. Imagine the scene. You walk into the Drunken Huntsman. The air smells of roasting meat and old wood. Elrendir is behind the counter, polishing a bow. You dump a sack of wolf pelts on the counter. He raises an eyebrow, ready to offer you the standard lowball rate. But then you lean in. You point out the quality of the fur, the cleanliness of the cut, thanks to your steel smithing, and the sheer volume of the haul. You speak with the confidence of a veteran. His eyes widen slightly. He nods. He slides a larger pile of septims across the wood. That feeling? That is the power of the Haggling perk. It is a victory as sweet as any slain dragon. So now you are well equipped. You have the steel to protect your body, the magic to heal your wounds, and the gold to fund your crusade. You are a tank, a medic, and a tycoon. But there is a flaw in this approach. Clanking around in heavy armour, glowing with restoration magic and jingling with coins makes you very, very loud. You're a beacon to every enemy in a 5-mile radius. Sometimes, the best way to win a fight is to never let the fight start in the first place. Sometimes, you need to stop being a warrior and start being a ghost. The shadows are gathering in the corners of the room. The sun has dipped below the horizon, and the moons, Massa and Secunda, are rising. It is time to learn how to disappear. The clatter of septims fades, replaced by a sound far more ominous, the wet, rhythmic clicking of chitin against stone. You have left the safety of Whiterun's market district and descended into the damp, phosphorescent gloom of Shimmermist Cave. The air here is thick with the smell of mould and something acrid. Poison. Ahead, the path twists into darkness, and you see the hunched, pale silhouette of a Falmer. It is blind, its ears twitching at the slightest disturbance in the air. If it hears you, it will scream, and a dozen more will swarm from the walls like angry termites. Your heavy steel armour, so reassuring in the sunlight, now feels like a death sentence. Every joint squeaks, every step threatens to echo. You realise with a sudden cold clarity that you cannot fight this swarm head-on. You need to become nothing. You need the fourth essential star in our constellation, stealth. The first perk in the sneak tree, simply titled Stealth, is the Great Equalizer. It is the moment the Dragonborn learns that valour is often just a fancy word for a premature grave. Regardless of your build, whether you're a hulking orc with a warhammer or a fragile high elf mage, the ability to bypass a threat is just as valuable as the ability to destroy it. In the early game, the world is full of things that outclass you. Giants, mammoths, saber cats, and the aforementioned Falmer do not care about your prophecy. They only care about biomass. The stealth perk, specifically the first rank, makes you 20% harder to detect. This isn't just a number, it's a blanket of shadows that wraps around you, dampening the noise of your breathing and softening the outline of your form against the dungeon walls. Mechanically, this perk fundamentally alters the game's user interface and your psychological state. This brings us to the core in-game fact, the sneak eye. When you crouch, a crosshair appears in the centre of your screen in the shape of an eye. When the eye is open, you're detected. The enemy sees you, knows where you are, and is likely already winding up a power attack. When the eye is a flat, horizontal line, you are hidden. You are a ghost. The tension of watching that eye slowly open, the iris widening as an enemy becomes suspicious, then narrowing again as they dismiss the noise as just the wind, is one of the most intense gameplay loops in Skyrim. That single UI element dictates your heart rate. Without the stealth perk, the eye pops open the moment you enter a room. With the perk, you can crouch right under a bandit's nose, stealing the cheese wheel off his table while he stares blankly at the wall. But let's talk about the elephant in the room, or rather, the archer in the shadows. You cannot discuss the stealth perk without acknowledging the most pervasive phenomenon in the Elder Scrolls community, the stealth archer evolution. It is a meme, a joke, and a fundamental law of the Skyrim universe. A player will start a new game with a firm resolution. This time, they say, I will be a heavy armor battlemage. I will use destruction magic and two-handed axes. I will charge into battle screaming. And they do, for about 4 levels. Then they encounter a difficult dungeon. They die a few times. They realise that getting hit hurts, so they crouch. They pull out a bow to take a potshot before the fight starts. It works beautifully. The sneak attack multiplier flashes in the corner. 2.0 times damage. The enemy drops. The dopamine hits. Slowly, insidiously, the heavy armor comes off, replaced by light leather. The two-handed axe is sold. The spells are forgotten. 10 hours later, that battle mage is crouching in a corner, sniping Draugr from 300 yards away, terrified of being seen. It is known as convergent evolution in biology, different species evolving similar traits to survive in similar environments. In Skyrim, the environment selects for stealth archers, because it is the path of least resistance and highest reward. Unlocking that first stealth perk is usually the first step down this slippery slope. You might tell yourself it's just for scouting, but we both know the truth. You're hooked on the safety of the shadows. There is a deeper, more obscure lore tidbit buried in the metaphysics of sneaking in Tamriel. In our world, sneaking is just being quiet. In the Elder Scrolls, stealth is often linked to shadow magic, a force associated with Nocturnal, the Daedric prince of night and darkness. The Shadow Cloaks, or the Nightingales of the Thieves' Guild, don't just hide, they literally manipulate the shadows to obscure themselves. The in-game book Sacred Witness recounts the interview with the legendary thief Azir Trajijazeri, who implies that true stealth is a philosophy, a way of walking in the blind spots of the universe. When you invest a perk point into stealth, you aren't just learning to walk on the balls of your feet. You're tapping into a minor subconscious form of illusion magic. You're convincing the observer that you aren't there. This explains why a master sneaker can crouch in broad daylight in front of a guard, and the guard will look right through them. It's not blindness, it's a perception filter. The sensory experience of a stealth run is pure ASMR. The sound design shifts. The ambient music often drops to a low, suspenseful drone. You become hyper-aware of your own footsteps. The scuff of leather on stone, the crunch of bone meal underfoot. You listen for the heavy breathing of a Draugr scourge, the wet slap of a hagraven's feet. It turns the game from an action RPG into a survival horror. Consider the Falmer Hive again. These twisted elves, blinded by centuries of Dwemer enslavement and toxic fungi, rely entirely on hearing and smell. Without the stealth perk, a trip into a place like Liar's Retreat is a suicide mission. The farmer keeps Chorus, giant insectoid centipedes that spit acid, as pets. If you blunder in, clanking your steel, you will be swarmed. The gore in these encounters is understated but horrific. The game doesn't show it explicitly, but the lore describes the farmer dragging victims off to be eaten or worse, fed to the Chorus. The stealth perk is your insurance policy against ending up as insect feed. It allows you to move past the sleeping Chorus hunters. It allows you to bypass the farmer gloomlurker standing guard on the bridge. It gives you the agency to choose your battles rather than having the battles choose you. Furthermore, stealth is the companion to your other skills. Remember that steel dagger you forged? Combined with a sneak attack, it becomes lethal. Remember the restoration magic? If you are hidden, you can heal yourself without drawing aggro, effectively resetting the fight on your terms. And the haggling? Well, stealing everything that isn't nailed down is much easier when no one sees you doing it. The stealth perk turns the entire world into a container of loot waiting to be opened. There is a specific thrill in clearing a room without ever being detected. You loose an arrow, thwip, and a bandit falls. His friends panic, drawing their weapons. Is someone there? They shout. You hold your breath, watching from the rafters or the shadows of a pillar. They search, swords drawn, passing within inches of your face. The eye reticle widens slightly, then closes. Must have been the rats, one mutters, sheathing his sword and returning to his chair. You smile. You are the predator here. You are the horror in the dark. It is a power fantasy that is distinct from the brute force of a warrior. It is the power of the unseen hand. But even the best thief gets caught. Even the most careful shadow walker sometimes steps on a bone trap or knocks over a kettle. When the eye snaps open and stays open, when the battle music swells and the enemy charges, your stealth fails. You're exposed. And in those moments, when the physical damage is imminent and the shadows have abandoned you, you need something that can alter your physiology instantly. You need a way to turn your blood into fire, your skin into stone, or your stamina into an endless well. You need to stop relying on the shadows and start relying on chemistry. As you slip out of the Falmer hive, heart pounding, lungs burning from holding your breath, you spot a cluster of blue mountain flowers growing near the exit. Beside them, a patch of glowing mushrooms. In the past, you might have walked right past them, but now you see them for what they are: ingredients. You realize that the difference between a master assassin and a dead trespasser often comes down to what they have in their pockets. It is time to learn the art of brewing. You emerge from the suffocating darkness of the Falmer hive into the cool, crisp air of the Skyrim night. The moons are high now, casting a silver sheen over the landscape. Your heart is still racing from that close encounter with the Shorus, and your health bar is uncomfortably low. You could cast a healing spell, sure, but your magicka is drained. You could eat a wheel of cheese, but let's be honest, swallowing an entire wheel of Edar cheese in 3 seconds is a digestive nightmare waiting to happen. Instead, you look down at your feet. Growing right there, glowing softly in the moonlight, is a patch of blue mountain flowers. Next to it, a fluttering blue butterfly settles on a rock. In your previous life, before you were the Dragonborn, you would have seen pretty scenery. Now you see a lifeline. You see the raw chaos of creation waiting to be distilled. This is where we unlock the 5th essential star in our constellation, Alchemist. The first rank of the Alchemist perk is the gatekeeper to self-sufficiency. Without it, your potions are weak, watery things that barely stitch a scratch. With it, your concoctions become 20% stronger. That might not sound like a game-breaking number, but in the early game, a potion that restores 30 health instead of 25 can be the difference between surviving a dragon's fire breath and becoming a charcoal briquette. But alchemy is more than just numbers. It is a fundamental shift in how you interact with the environment. It turns the entire province of Skyrim into your personal grocery store. The core in-game fact here is a mechanic that is both intuitive and deeply weird. You learn alchemy by putting random things in your mouth. This is the Wartcraft phase. To discover the first effect of any ingredient, you have to eat it. You, the legendary hero, are crouching in a swamp munching on a handful of spider eggs, a giant's toe, or a suspiciously glowing mushroom just to see what happens. You think, as your vision goes blurry and your stamina plummets. Tastes like paralysis. It's a trial-by-stomach approach to science that defines the early alchemist's life. But once you stop snacking on the wildlife and start using an alchemy lab, the real magic happens. The alchemy table is one of the most satisfying workstations in the game. The bubbling retorts, the grinding of the mortar and pestle, the hiss of steam. It's an ASMR paradise. Here you mix that blue mountain flower with a wheat stalk you stole from a farm. The result? A potion of Fortify Health that also restores health. It's a dual-effect cocktail that saves your life when a saber-cat pounces. Or perhaps you mix a charred skeever hide with a mudcrab chitin to cure disease, saving you a trip to a shrine every time a wolf gives you rock joint. Let's dive into a bit of obscure lore. Alchemy in Tamriel is not just chemistry, it's metaphysical cooking. The book De Rerum Direnis suggests that ingredients contain traits, because they are echoes of the creation of the mundus. When you combine them, you aren't just mixing fluids, you are resolving a conflict between their magical resonances. A Daedra heart has chaotic, life-draining properties because it literally comes from a plane of chaos. A Nirnroot hums because it is attuned to the magical currents of the earth. When you crush these items, you are releasing that trapped potential. The Alchemist perk represents your character's growing understanding of these esoteric frequencies. You aren't just mashing flowers, you're conducting a symphony of magical properties. The community has a legendary relationship with this skill, primarily due to the infamous restoration loop. This is the fan theory and exploit that broke the internet, and the game. Players discovered that if you brewed a potion of Fortify Restoration, drank it, and then unequipped and re-equipped your gear, the game would glitch and apply the enchantment bonuses exponentially. Repeat the process enough times, and you could craft a fork that deals 1,000,000 points of damage or a ring that gives you infinite health. While unofficial patches have curbed this god mode tendency, the memory of it lingers. It represents the ultimate promise of alchemy, the ability to break the rules of reality through better chemistry. Even without breaking the game, alchemy breaks the economy. Remember our Haggling perk from Section 3? Alchemy is its best friend, a single potion of damage magicka. Regen, made from a blue butterfly wing and a blue mountain flower, two of the most common items in the game, sells for a ridiculous amount of gold compared to the cost of its parts. You can walk from Riverwood to Whiterun, pick every flower along the road, brew 20 potions and sell them to Arcadia's Cauldron for enough gold to buy a spell tome or a new weapon. You are literally printing money from weeds. There is also the Giant's Toe phenomenon. In the Skyrim community, the Giant's Toe is the holy grail of ingredients. For reasons known only to the divines and the developers, adding a Giant's Toe to a potion drastically increases its value and the experience points gained from crafting it. This leads to the absurd mental image of the Dragonborn, Slayer of Alduin, running around the tundra specifically hunting giants just to harvest their podiatric digits. "Sorry, big guy," you mutter as you loot the corpse. "I need to pay my mortgage." It's grim, it's grotesque, and it's arguably the most efficient way to level up. But beyond the gold and the memes, alchemy offers something tactical: preparation. A warrior prepares for battle by sharpening their sword, steelsmithing. A mage prepares by meditating, restoration. An alchemist prepares by brewing. Before you enter a Nordic ruin, you brew resist frost potions using thistle and snowberries. Before you fight a dragon, you brew resist fire using bone meal and dragon's tongue. You're proactively countering the enemy's strengths. This perk rewards the player who thinks ahead. It rewards the player who reads the environment. Consider the roleplay aspect. You're a traveller in a harsh land. You stop by a stream to refill your water skin, if you're playing with survival mods, and notice a patch of Mora tapinella growing on a rotting log. You harvest it. Later, deep in a dungeon, you combine it with scaly foliota to create a potent illusion-enhancing drug. You feel like a survivalist. You feel like a witcher preparing oils for a hunt. And it adds a layer of depth to the game that simple hack and slash cannot provide. And let's not forget the poisons. Alchemy isn't just about healing, it's about hurting. With the Alchemist perk, you can brew poisons that paralyze, slow, or drain the stamina of your enemies. You can coat your steel arrow in a paralysis poison made from canis root and swamp fungal pod. You shoot a bandit chief from the shadows, thanks to your stealth perk, and he stiffens, falling over like a statue. It's hilarious, yes, but also incredibly effective. You have turned a difficult boss fight into a slapstick comedy routine. The poison does the work, you just deliver the message. The visual feedback of alchemy is subtle but rewarding. Watching your inventory fill with multicoloured bottles, red for health, green for stamina, blue for magicka, and purple for the nasty stuff, gives you a sense of readiness. You aren't afraid of running out of resources because you are the resource generator. You don't need to beg Colette for healing potions. You have 20 of them in your backpack made from wheat and butterflies. So you have the steel, the spells, the gold, the stealth, and now the chemistry. You are a force of nature. You can heal yourself, hide from enemies, and brew liquid death. But there is a ceiling to what you can achieve with physical items alone. A steel sword, no matter how sharp or poisoned, is still just a piece of metal. A leather helmet is just dried skin. To truly ascend to the level of the heroes of old, to the level of Wuzgramor or the Telvanni wizards, you need to infuse your gear with the very souls of the creatures you slay. You need to trap the essence of your enemies and bind it to your will. As you cork a fresh bottle of potion, the liquid swirling with a faint magical luminescence, you look at your sword. It's reliable, but it's silent. It doesn't hum with power. It doesn't burn with an inner fire. You think about the empty soul gems you found in that last dungeon. You think about the enchanting table in Dragon's Reach, sitting there, waiting for someone with the knowledge to use it. It is time to learn the dark art of soul binding. You leave the bubbling alchemy lab, your pack now clinking with glass vials of liquid courage and distilled poisons, and step across the stone floor of Dragon's Reach. The great porch overlooks the city, but your destination lies in the dusty, candlelit corner occupied by Farengar's secret fire. There, sitting ominously against the wall, is a table that looks less like a crafting station and more like an altar to a dark god. It is an arcane enchanter, instantly recognisable by the goat skull mounted on the front and the eerie, pulsating green light that seems to emanate from within the stone itself. The air around it tastes of ozone and old parchment. This is where science ends and mysticism begins. This is where you unlock the 6th essential star in our constellation, Enchanter. The first rank of the Enchanter perk is the gateway to magical supremacy. Without it, any attempt to imbue a weapon or piece of armor with magic results in a pitifully weak effect. A sword that adds a mere whiff of fire, or a pair of boots that increases your stamina by an amount so negligible you might as well just take a deep breath. By investing that single perk point into Enchanter, you increase the strength of new enchantments by 20%. Again, the percentage seems modest on paper, but in practice, it is the tipping point that makes crafted gear superior to found loot. It transforms a dagger of mild annoyance into a dagger of soul-drinking terror. The core in-game fact that dictates this entire skill tree is the law of disenchanting. To learn how to wreath a sword in flame, you must first find a weapon that already possesses that power and destroy it on the table. It is a harsh lesson in sacrifice. You find a beautiful elven sword of embers in a dungeon chest, a weapon far superior to your current steel blade. But you know the rules. To master the fire, you must break the vessel. You place the sword on the table, the arcane energies flare, the metal shatters into dust, and the knowledge of fire damage flows into your mind. This mechanic creates a compulsive scavenger hunt. Every magical item you find becomes a potential lesson. You aren't just looting for gold, you are looting for knowledge. But the fuel for this fire is where the lore gets delightfully grim. Enchanting runs on souls. To power a magical item, you must trap the soul of a living creature inside a soul gem, a crystalline mineral that acts as a spiritual battery. This brings us to a rather dark, obscure lore tidbit involving the soul cairn. Introduced fully in the Dawnguard expansion, the soul cairn is a plane of oblivion inhabited by the ideal masters, giant floating crystals that crave souls. Lore suggests that when you use a filled soul gem to recharge a weapon, or create an enchantment, the energy is used, but the remnant of that soul is often bartered to the ideal masters in exchange for the power. Every time you recharge your fire axe with the soul of a mud crab, you're essentially feeding a cosmic entity. And when you use a black soul gem, capable of holding the souls of men and elves, you are condemning that bandit, or perhaps that annoying neighbour, and into an eternity of wandering a purple lightning-struck purgatory. It adds a heavy moral weight to your shiny new gear, doesn't it? The community, of course, has turned this metaphysical horror into a running joke. The Nazim Soul Trap is a rite of passage for many players. Nazim, the condescending Redguard in Whiterun, who constantly asks if you get to the Cloud District very often, is almost universally loathed. Fans love to debate the most ironic fate for him. Is it enough to just kill him? No. The true punishment is to cast Soul Trap, slay him, put his soul into a gem, and then use that gem to enchant a pair of boots with Muffle or Fortify Sneak. Then, you literally walk all over him for the rest of the game. It is petty, it is vindictive, and it is a perfect example of how the enchanting skill allows for emergent storytelling. But let's look at the synergy with our previous perks. Remember the steel smithing from section 1? A plain steel dagger is worth a handful of gold. A steel dagger enchanted with Banish Daedra, the most valuable enchantment in the game economy, is worth thousands. Remember the haggling from section 3? Selling these enchanted daggers is the fastest way to drain a merchant's entire gold supply. And remember the stealth from section 4? You can enchant your boots with Muffle to silence your footsteps completely, or your ring with Fortify Archery to turn your bow into a railgun. The Enchanter perk acts as a force multiplier for every other skill you possess. The visual and audio design of the enchanting process is hypnotic. The sound of the soul being drawn from the gem, a high-pitched crystalline shing, followed by the deep, resonant thrum of the item accepting the magic, is incredibly satisfying. The table itself is covered in candles that never seem to burn down, and the skull watches you with hollow eyes. It feels like forbidden magic. Unlike Restoration, which feels holy, or Alchemy, which feels scientific, Enchanting feels like you are hacking the code of the universe. You're taking the animus of a living thing and twisting it into a tool. Let's be honest, in the early game, you probably don't have access to Grand Soul Gems or the Banish enchantment. You're working with petty soul gems filled with the souls of Slaughterfish and Skeever. But even here, the Enchanter perk shines. You can enchant your helmet with Fortify Magicka, giving you that extra bit of juice needed to cast a healing spell. You can enchant your gauntlets with Fortify One-Handed, making your steel sword bite deeper. It allows you to customize your build to cover your weaknesses. If you find yourself dying to mages, you don't have to wait to find a shield of magic resistance. You can make one, provided you've destroyed one first. There is a rhythm to the Enchanter's life. You enter a dungeon with an empty weapon and a pocket full of empty soul gems. You cast Soul Trap on a Draugr or use a weapon with the enchantment. You kill it. Whoosh. The gem fills. You clear the dungeon. You return to town. You use the filled gems to enchant the loot you found. You sell the enchanted loot. You buy more empty gems. It is a loop of violence and commerce that fuels your progression. And with that first perk point in Enchanter, the loot becomes efficient. You aren't wasting the souls you capture on subpar gear. This perk also prepares you for the late game. While we are focusing on the first perks, Enchanting is the skill that eventually allows you to break the game's difficulty curve entirely. The Twin Souls perk at level 100 lets you put 2 enchantments on one item, but you will never reach that summit if you don't take the first step at the base of the mountain. The Enchanter perk is that first step. It validates the effort of carrying all those heavy soul gems. Think about the feeling of wearing a full set of enchanted gear. You're no longer just a person in metal plates. You're a walking artifact. Your armor glows with a faint sheen. Your weapon hums. When you step into the darkness, you're bringing your own light, literally if you enchanted your sword with fire. You have moved beyond the physical limitations of steel and muscle and entered the realm of the arcane warrior. However, all this magic comes at a cost. Casting spells, swinging enchanted swords, and sprinting from one end of Skyrim to the other is exhausting. Your magicka regenerates, and your health can be restored with potions, but your stamina, the green bar that governs your ability to move, power attack, and carry loot, is a finite resource that drains all too quickly. You find yourself panting, lunging for an enemy, only to have your vision blur and your swing falter because you're out of breath. You need a way to recover your wind without stopping the fight. You need a way to turn your healing magic into a source of kinetic energy. As you step away from the arcane enchanter, the green glow fading from your eyes, you feel the weight of your gear. You're strong, you're magical, but you're tired. You realize that to keep up this pace, you need a second wind. You need the secret technique of the Restoration School that the battlemages of the Imperial Legion swear by. You're halfway up the 7,000 steps, the pilgrimage to High Hrothgar that every Dragonborn must eventually undertake. The wind is howling, carrying with it the stinging bite of ice crystals. Ahead of you, a frost troll roars, its white fur matted with the blood of the last pilgrim who tried to pass. You raise your shield, bracing for the impact. The troll slams its fists into your block, staggering you. You counter with a power attack, swinging your enchanted sword with all your might. It connects, carving a deep gash, but the troll regenerates. You swing again and again. But on the third swing, your arm feels like lead. Your vision blurs at the edges. You try to raise your shield, but your character simply can't. You're out of stamina. The green bar is empty. You're helpless, a sitting duck in fancy armor. And the troll winds up for a crushing blow. This is the tyranny of the stamina bar, the resource that dictates your physical agency in the world of Skyrim. It governs your sprinting, your power attacks, your shield bashes, and your carry weight. When it's gone, you are just a fragile sack of meat waiting to be tenderized. This is why the 7th essential star in our constellation is Respite. Located at level 40 in the restoration tree, Respite is the perk that fundamentally changes the rhythm of combat. Its description is simple, almost innocuous. Healing spells also restore stamina, but the implications of this are staggering. The core in-game fact here is that Respite applies to all healing spells that target the caster. Whether you're using the basic healing channel or the burst heal of fast healing or close wounds, every point of health you recover also refills your lungs and muscles. It turns your magicka bar into a backup battery for your stamina bar. It creates a closed loop of energy that allows a warrior to fight with the intensity of a berserker and the endurance of a marathon runner. Let's go back to that frost troll. Without respite, you have to back away, waiting for the green bar to slowly tick back up while the troll heals itself. With respite, you cast fast healing for a split second. A golden light washes over you. Not only do your ribs knit back together, but your breath returns instantly. You don't just survive, you explode back into action. You can immediately launch another power attack, staggering the troll. You can sprint around its flank, you can shield bash it into submission. Respite turns a defensive pause into an offensive reset. The lore behind this is fascinating because it touches on the metaphysics of fatigue in the Elder Scrolls universe. In previous games like Morrowind and Oblivion, fatigue was a primary attribute that affected everything. If your fatigue was low in Morrowind, you would literally fail to cast spells or miss sword swings, even if you were standing right in front of the enemy. In Skyrim, they streamlined this into stamina, focusing it on mobility and heavy hits. However, the Respite perk bridges the gap between the magical and the physical in a way that few other perks do. It suggests that restoration magic isn't just knitting flesh, it is revitalizing the spirit. It is flooding the body with ethereal energy that mimics the effects of adrenaline and ATP. You aren't just fixing the machine, you're refueling it. There is a significant community debate surrounding Respite, often pitted against the legendary vegetable soup meta. For the uninitiated, vegetable soup is a craftable food item made from cabbage, potato, leek, and tomato. It regenerates 1 point of health and 1 point of stamina per second for 720 seconds. Because Skyrim's combat mechanics only require 1 point of stamina to initiate a power attack or shield bash, a player who eats a soup can technically stun lock an enemy indefinitely, even if their bar looks empty. Fans argue, why waste a perk point on Respite when I can just drink soup? The counter-argument, and the reason Respite is essential for a first perks list, is burst potential and convenience. Vegetable soup requires farming and inventory space. Respite is always with you. Furthermore, while 1 stamina lets you bash, it doesn't let you sprint. Respite fills the entire bar. This is crucial for travel. Skyrim is huge. You will spend 50% of your playtime running from point A to point B. With Respite, you can sprint until your lungs burn, cast a quick healing spell to refill the bar instantly, and keep sprinting. You effectively have an infinite sprint meter, provided you have the Magicka. You become the fastest courier in Tamriel, outrunning wolves, bears, and even the board dialogue of guards. Consider the Paladin or Spellzord archetype. This is the most popular build for a reason. It covers all bases. You wear heavy armor, steel smithing, you swing a sword, and you use magic. Respite is the keystone of this build. It justifies investing in Magicka even if you primarily want to hit things with a hammer. It allows you to tank damage not just with your health pool, but with your ability to constantly stagger enemies with power attacks. A bandit chief winds up. Bash him. He tries again. Bash him. You take a hit, heal, and bash. It creates a rhythm of violence that is overwhelmingly oppressive to the AI. There is also a subtle, obscure interaction with the Necromage perk, which comes later in the restoration tree, if you are playing as a vampire. If you are undead, all spells against undead are more effective, including spells you cast on yourself. This means Respite heals more stamina if you are a vampire. It's a favourite trick of the min-maxing community, turning the Dragonborn into an undead engine of perpetual motion. The visual and audio feedback of Respite is identical to standard healing, but the player feels it differently. When you are trudging through the swamps of Yarmarch, over-encumbered by dragon bones, and your stamina drains to 0, the screen greys out slightly. The sound of your own heartbeat thumps in your ears. You cast the spell, Shing, and the colour returns. The heartbeat stops. You take a sharp intake of breath. It is one of the few mechanics in the game that simulates the feeling of catching your breath. It is deeply satisfying, almost like drinking a glass of cold water after a long run. Moreover, Respite saves you from the death loop. We've all been there. You save your game right before a difficult fight, but your health and stamina are low. You load in, and you die instantly because you can't run away. With Respite, that first split-second cast gives you the mobility to escape. It allows you to retreat, regroup, and re-engage. It transforms a game over screen into a tactical withdrawal. Let's look at the synergy with the perks we've already unlocked. Steel smithing. You're wearing heavy armor, which drains stamina faster when sprinting until later perks. Respite mitigates this penalty. Novice restoration. You can cast the healing spell cheaper, meaning more stamina refills per Magicka bar. Haggling. You bought the fast healing tome, which is the most efficient spell to use with Respite. Enchanter. If you enchanted your gear with Fortify Restoration, the cost of the spell drops even further, eventually becoming free. Infinite stamina for 0 cost. This perk also fundamentally changes how you explore. You stop fearing the landscape. A mountain is no longer a slow, agonizing climb, it's a series of sprints. A river is no longer a slow swim. You can heal your stamina while swimming to keep sprinting across the surface, or at least swim faster. You become a master of traversal. But as you stand over the defeated frost troll, chest heaving but rapidly recovering thanks to your magic, you notice something troubling. You draw your sword to wipe the troll blood off the blade, and you see a chip in the edge. You look at your enchanted cuirass, the one that glows with the soul of a wolf you trapped earlier. It's dented. You head back to a grindstone in Everstead, intending to sharpen the blade, but when you try to improve it, you are stopped. The game gives you a message that sinks your heart. You do not have the perk to improve magical items. Your enchanting skill, Section 6, has actually backfired. By imbuing your steel sword with magic, you have made it impossible to maintain with your standard smithing skills. The magic interferes with the physical tempering process. Your legendary steel sword is now just Steel Sword of Embers, and it's doing less physical damage than a non-magical blade you could forge. You have hit the magic wall. To progress, you need to fuse the knowledge of the forge with the knowledge of the arcane. You need to learn how to hammer around the enchantment without breaking it. You look at the workbench, you look at the grindstone, you realise that being a blacksmith and being a wizard are no longer separate career paths. They must merge. You need the skill that allows you to temper the very magic itself into the metal. You stand before the grindstone in Everstead, the wheels spinning with a hypnotic, rhythmic whir-whir-whir. In your hands, you hold a blade that should be the envy of every bandit in the rift. A glass sword of burning found in the depths of a Nordic tomb, its malachite edge pulsing with an inner fiery heartbeat. It is beautiful. It is magical. And tragically, it is duller than a butter knife compared to the mundane steel greatsword you forged back in Riverwood. You press the glass blade to the stone expecting sparks, but nothing happens. The game, or rather, the laws of ethereal physics, stops you. You lack the arcane blacksmith perk. It is a moment of profound disappointment. You realise that in the world of Skyrim, magic often comes at the cost of physical integrity. Without the knowledge to bridge the gap, you are forced to choose. Do you want to burn your enemies with weak strikes, or cleave them with strong, boring steel? This is the magic wall, a mid-game hurdle that frustrates every aspiring hero, and it is why the 8th essential star in our constellation is Arcane Blacksmith. Sitting at level 60 in the smithing tree, this perk is the keystone that locks your entire build together. It is the bridge between the warrior's muscle and the wizard's mind. The core in-game fact here is simple but transformative. Without this perk, you cannot improve magical weapons and armour at grindstones and workbenches. This restriction applies to two critical categories of gear. First, it applies to the loot you find. Those boots of hauling or that sword of the leech are stuck at their base stats forever. Second, and more painfully, it applies to the unique artifacts of the Daedric princes. Dawnbreaker, the Mace of Molag Bal, the Ebony Mail, these legendary items, gifts from literal gods, are often statistically inferior to a well-tempered iron mace if you cannot sharpen them. The Arcane Blacksmith perk unlocks their true potential, allowing you to temper a god's weapon to legendary status, making it viable for the slaughter of endgame dragons. Let's be honest, there is something deeply funny about the idea that a Daedric prince, a being of infinite power and malice, would hand you a weapon that isn't quite as sharp as it could be. Here, mortal, Molag Bal seems to say, take this mace of domination. Oh, but be careful, the handle is a bit loose and I didn't buff out the scratches. It implies that the Dragonborn, a mortal with a hammer and some elbow grease, can improve upon the craftsmanship of Oblivion. It grounds the high fantasy in the gritty reality of maintenance. Even a sword that drinks souls needs a whetstone now and then. The community has raged about this dynamic for over a decade. The unique weapons suck debate is a staple of forum threads and Reddit posts. Players lament that a generic dragonbone sword, crafted and enchanted by the player, will always mathematically outperform the unique lore weapons like Wuthrad or Chilrend. Min-maxers argue that this makes exploring for artifacts pointless. Why delve into a Dwemer ruin for Volendrung when I can make a better hammer at home? However, proponents of the Arcane Blacksmith perk argue that it saves these artifacts from obsolescence. With this perk, and a high enough smithing skill, boosted by potions of course, you can push the damage of Dawnbreaker high enough that the difference becomes negligible. It allows you to choose fashion and roleplay over pure math without feeling like you're nerfing yourself. It lets you wield the cool, glowing sword without feeling like you're hitting enemies with a wet noodle. But how does one sharpen magic? This brings us to a fascinating, albeit obscure, lore tidbit regarding the nature of enchantment in Tamriel. In the book Twin Secrets, an enchanter describes the process of binding a soul to an object as creating a tension within the material. The magic inhabits the spaces between the physical lattice of the metal. When you grind a blade, you are removing material. Logically, if you remove the material that holds the magic, the enchantment should unravel or explode. Arcane blacksmithing, then, is not just about sharpening, it is about harmonizing. It is the skill of reshaping the vessel without disturbing the contents. It implies that the Dragonborn is listening to the tone of the metal, a concept borrowed from the tonal architecture of the Dwemer, and hammering in the silent intervals of the enchantment song. You're performing open-heart surgery on a sword while it is still awake. The visual feedback when you finally unlock this perk and take your magical gear to the grindstone is immensely satisfying. You take that same glass sword from before, you press it to the wheel. This time, the sparks fly. The sound is a high-pitched scream of metal on stone, underscored by the hum of the enchantment. You work the blade, folding the edge, refining the point. When you pull it away, the stats have jumped. That 20 damage becomes 45 damage. The fine tag becomes exquisite, then flawless, then epic, and finally the coveted legendary. You have successfully defied the limitations of the material world. You have merged the arcane with the industrial. This perk also closes the loop on our previous investments. Remember the steelsmithing, Section 1, and Enchanter, Section 6 perks. Arcane blacksmithing is the glue that binds them. Before this perk, you had to be very careful about the order of operations. If you enchanted a sword, you couldn't improve it later. If you improved a sword, you could enchant it, but you couldn't improve it again as your skill leveled up. This created a fear of commitment. Should I enchant this Daedric sword now? What if my smithing skill goes up tomorrow? With arcane blacksmithing, that anxiety vanishes. You can enchant your gear immediately to get the magical benefits, and then return to the grindstone every few levels to squeeze a bit more physical damage out of it. It allows your gear to grow with you. It turns your equipment into a living project rather than a static disposable item. Consider the economy of loot again. We talked about haggling, Section 3, but arcane blacksmithing acts as a supercharger for your wallet. You find a generic iron armor of health in a chest. It's worth maybe 200 gold. If you take it to a workbench and improve it to exquisite quality, which costs you 1 iron ingot, worth about 5 gold, the value of the armor jumps significantly. You are essentially adding value to loot through labor. You become a flipper of magical goods. You buy low-quality enchanted gear from merchants, refurbish it at the forge and sell it back to them for a profit. You are the gentrifier of the Skyrim arms market. There is also a profound sense of attachment that comes with this perk. In many RPGs, you constantly swap out your gear for better numbers. You find a sword, you use it for an hour, you find a better sword, you throw the old one away. But with arcane blacksmithing, you can keep the same weapon for the entire game if you want. That steel sword you forged in Riverwood? You can enchant it with Fiery Soul Trap. Then, as you level up, you can keep tempering it. It stays with you. It becomes your sword, not just a sword. By the time you face Alduin, that blade has a history. It has slain Draugr, dragons and bandits. It has been broken and remade a dozen times. It is a part of your legend. However, as you stand there admiring your newly sharpened, glowing arsenal, a new problem arises. You have become too efficient. Your inventory is bursting with legendary enchanted daggers, improved dragon-scale armor, and potions of ultimate healing. You're a walking treasury. You trudge back to Whiterun, ready to liquidate your assets, and you walk into War Maidens. You dump a pile of goods on the counter. Ulfberth Warbear looks at you, looks at the pile, and shakes his head. "I don't have that kind of coin," he says. You check his inventory. He has 750 gold. Your pile is worth 5,000. You go to Belethor. He has 750 gold. You go to Arcadia. She has 500. You realise that the economy of Skyrim is broken, not because prices are unfair, but because nobody has enough cash to pay you what you're worth. You're a billionaire in a world of paupers. You are carrying the GDP of solitude in your backpack. and you can't spend it because the merchants are too poor. You need to fix the market. You need to unlock the ability to turn any merchant into a fence for any goods, and you need to inject some serious liquidity into their registers. The sun is high, your pockets are heavy, and your patience is wearing thin. It's time to stop treating merchants like NPCs and start treating them like investors. It is time to unlock the silver tongue that opens the golden vaults. The sun beats down on the cobblestones of Solitude, the capital of Skyrim. You're standing outside the winking skeever, burdened with glorious purpose, and about 300 pounds of glorious loot. Your inventory is a chaotic museum of your recent conquests. A stack of dwarven bows you improved at the forge, a handful of garnets, a dozen potions of minor stamina you don't need, and a suit of orcish armour you peeled off a bandit chief. You are technically rich. The value of the items in your backpack could buy a small farm in Rorikstead. But there is a problem. You are asset-rich, cash-poor. You walk into Angeline's Aromatics hoping to offload some of this weight. Angeline, the kindly elderly alchemist, smiles at you. You try to sell her the orcish armour. She looks at you as if you've just asked her to juggle live skeevers. "I'm an apothecary," her expression says. "What am I supposed to do with a breastplate?" This is the logistical nightmare that plagues every adventurer in the mid-game. You have to run the merchant lap. You sell the weapons to the blacksmith, the potions to the alchemist, the food to the innkeeper, and the random junk to the general goods store. It is a tedious ritual of loading screens and sprinting. It turns the heroic Dragonborn into a glorified delivery courier. This is why the 9th essential star in our constellation, and perhaps the greatest quality of life upgrade in the entire game, is Merchant. Buried deep in the speech tree at level 50, the Merchant perk is the moment the Dragonborn transcends the petty bureaucratic rules of Skyrim's trade guilds. The description is deceptively simple. Can sell any type of item to any kind of merchant. But the impact on your gameplay loop is revolutionary. The core in-game fact here is the removal of the keyword restriction on vendor inventories. Without this perk, vendors are shackled by their class. Blacksmiths only buy weapons and armour. Alchemists only buy ingredients and potions. Spell merchants only buy books and clothing. With the merchant perk, those barriers dissolve. You can walk into War Maiden's and sell Ulfberth a basket of apples, a scroll of fireball, and a diamond ring. He will buy them all without blinking. Imagine the sheer convenience. You finish a dungeon delve, encumbered and exhausted. You fast travel to Whiterun. You crawl to the first shop you see, usually Adrian Avanici at the forge right by the gate. You dump everything. The magical staves, the jewels, the dragon bones, the excess potions. She buys it all. You clear your entire inventory in one conversation. You don't have to enter the city. You don't have to sit through a loading screen to get into Belethor's shop. You don't have to listen to Nazim on your way to the Cloud District. You are free. The Merchant perk effectively deletes the inventory management minigame that bogs down so many RPGs. But let's look at the lore implications of this. Why were the merchants so restrictive in the first place? The in-game book, The Buying Game, hints at the strict regulations of the East Empire Company and the local Jarls. Trade in Tamriel is highly regulated. Guilds protect their niches aggressively. A blacksmith selling potions would be seen as encroaching on the apothecary's turf, or potentially leading to fines or a revocation of their license. When you unlock the merchant perk, you aren't just unlocking a game mechanic, you're unlocking a level of charisma and influence that allows you to convince these shopkeepers to break the law. You're essentially saying, "Look, Adrian, I know you don't usually deal in stolen sweet rolls, but for me, you can make an exception. Think of the resale value. You're the disruptor of the Skyrim economy. You're turning every mom-and-pop shop into a pawn shop." This perk also solves the gold cap issue we touched on in the previous section. While merchants still have limited gold, usually around 750 to 1000 septims, the merchant perk allows you to effectively pool the gold of the entire town. If Adrian runs out of gold, you don't have to stop selling. You just walk 10 feet to the drunken huntsman and sell your remaining broadswords to the innkeeper. You can drain the liquidity of an entire hold in minutes. The community has long debated the speech build viability. For years, the prevailing wisdom was that speech was a dump stat because you could just chug a potion of glibness or wear an amulet of Zenithar. But the merchant perk is the counter-argument. The time-saved metric is real. Players have calculated that the time spent running between shops adds up to hours over a 100-hour playthrough. The merchant perk gives you those hours back. It allows you to spend more time slaying dragons and less time navigating menus. It is the ultimate respect your time perk. There is also a fascinating obscure interaction, or rather, a loophole, that the merchant perk exposes regarding the fence mechanic. Normally you cannot sell stolen goods to anyone but the Thieves Guild fences. The merchant perk does not bypass this rule on its own. That requires the level 90 fence perk. However, it does allow you to launder goods in a way. If you use the merchant perk to sell a legitimate item to a merchant and then buy it back, the game sometimes clears the stolen tag on certain stacked items due to a coding quirk in how inventory stacks are handled. It's a risky maneuver, but for the lore-savvy thief, it represents the complexity of laundering money in a medieval fantasy setting. Let's talk about the specific joy of selling trash to classy merchants. There is a perverse satisfaction in walking into the Radiant Raiment in Solitude, a shop run by the haughtiest high elves in the game who constantly insult your outfit, and selling them a pile of bloody farmer ears and a rusted iron mace. Oh, you don't like my outfit, Inderi? Well, you're going to buy this troll skull anyway. The merchant perk turns the power dynamic around. You force them to do business on your terms. You pollute their pristine inventory with the grit of your adventures. The audio design of the transaction remains the same, that heavy, clinking cha-ching, but the context changes. When you sell a diamond to a blacksmith, you imagine them looking at it, confused, then shrugging and tossing it into a coal bin. I guess I can inlay a sword with this, they mutter. When you sell a Daedric warhammer to an apothecary, you imagine them using it as a very, very expensive paperweight. The world feels more fluid, more responsive to your whims. Furthermore, this perk synergizes beautifully with Alchemy, Section 5, and Smithing, Section 8. You can now create a loop of commerce that is entirely self-contained. You buy ingredients from an alchemist, brew potions, sell the potions back to the alchemist to drain their gold, then sell them your enchanted daggers to get the ingredients back, if they had any, effectively using the merchant as a storage chest for your liquid assets. You are cycling gold through the economy at a rate that would make a modern-day economist weep. The merchant perk also prepares you for the investor perk, which is the next step up the tree. Once you can sell anything to anyone, the logical next step is to give them more money to buy your stuff. But even without investor, the merchant perk alone is enough to sustain a wealthy lifestyle. You can finally afford to buy every spell tome from the College of Winterhold. You can buy the materials for your Hearthfire house without mining a single ore vein. You can buy the expensive furniture packages for your homes in Solitude and Markarth. You're moving from survivor to aristocrat. But let's not forget the roleplay aspect of the travelling merchant. Some players eschew the Dragonborn identity entirely and play as a peddler. They travel from town to town, buying low in Riften and selling high in Solitude. The merchant perk is the cornerstone of this build. It allows you to roleplay a Khajiit caravaner who isn't allowed in the cities, or an Imperial East Empire agent. You are playing the Elder Scrolls Wall Street. However, there is a catch. You have all this gold. You have the best gear money can buy. You have the best gear you can make. But as you look at your character sheet, you realise that your raw stats are still mortal. You can only swing that sword so hard. You can only cast that spell so many times. You need to push beyond the limits of your race and birth sign. You need to use your enchanting skill, which we started in Section 6, to not just add fire to a sword, but to fundamentally rewrite your own genetic code. You need to make yourself smarter, stronger, and more capable than any human or elf has a right to be. You stand at the enchanting table again. You have the soul gems. You have the base items. But the numbers are still too low. Fortify one-handed 20%. It's good, but it's not godly. You know that with the right knowledge, you could double that number. You could make a ring that makes you hit like a giant. You could make a helmet that gives you the mind of a savant. You need to unlock the secret of the insightful Enchanter. You return to the Arcane Enchanter in Dragon's Reach. Your pockets heavy with the gold you made from exploiting every merchant in Whiterun Hold. You are wealthy, yes, but gold cannot block a giant's club. You have the best steel, improved by your arcane blacksmithing, but steel cannot stop a dragon's breath. You have the basic enchantments, but they feel mortal. A 20% boost to your fire damage, a minor increase to your stamina. It's useful, but it's not legendary. To truly walk in the footsteps of Isgramor or the Nerevarin, you need to bend the laws of mathematics to your will. You need to make your armor do the fighting for you. This is where we unlock the 10th essential star in our constellation, Insightful Enchanter. Sitting at level 50 in the enchanting tree, they are right next to the Corpus Enchanter perk, which boosts health/stamina/magicka. Insightful Enchanter is the specific key to godhood. Its description is unassuming. Skill enchantments on armor are 25% stronger. But do not be fooled by the dry text. This perk is the engine that drives the most powerful builds in the game. It doesn't just add flat stats like health, it multiplies your competence. The core in-game fact here is the distinction between stat enchantments and skill enchantments. Stat enchantments, like Fortify Health, are linear. You add 50 health, you survive one more hit. Skill enchantments, like Fortify One-Handed or Fortify Alchemy, are multipliers. If you have the Insightful Enchanter perk, you can craft a ring, a necklace, a pair of gauntlets, and a pair of boots that each boost your sword damage by 40% or more. That is a total increase of 160% damage output. You're swinging a sword that hits nearly 3 times harder than normal, purely because of your jewellery. This perk allows you to take a rusted iron dagger and turn it into a weapon of mass destruction simply by wearing the right outfit. But the true power of Insightful Enchanter lies in its synergy with the crafting triad: smithing, alchemy, and enchanting. This is the holy trinity of power gaming in Skyrim. To forge the best weapons, smithing, you need to drink a Fortify smithing potion. To brew the best potions, alchemy, you need to wear Fortify alchemy gear. And to enchant that gear, enchanting, you need to drink a Fortify enchanting potion. The Insightful Enchanter perk is the critical multiplier in this loop. It allows you to create alchemy gear, a hat, gloves, ring, and necklace that is 25% stronger. This stronger gear allows you to brew stronger smithing potions. Those stronger potions allow you to improve your weapons to numbers that shouldn't exist. Without this specific perk, the loop decays. With it, the loop ascends. Let's delve into the obscure lore of this mechanic. In the metaphysical studies of the Elder Scrolls universe, particularly the concept of mythopoeia, reality is shaped by belief and symbolic action. When you enchant an object with Fortify Archery, you aren't just making the bowstring tighter, you're imbuing the object with the concept of accuracy. You're wearing the idea of a master archer. The Insightful Enchanter perk represents the Dragonborn's ability to weave these concepts more tightly into the physical world. It implies a level of tonal manipulation, similar to the Dwemer's tonal architecture, where you're rewriting the song of the object to harmonize perfectly with your own skills. You aren't just wearing gloves, you are wearing the essence of the Swordmaster. The community debate around this perk is fierce and unending. Purists argue that abusing the crafting triad to create weapons that deal 500 damage ruins the game. Where is the challenge, they ask? If you one-shot Alduin, was there ever a threat? They view Insightful Enchanter as the enabler of a broken game state. However, the defenders, the lore-Dragonborn faction, argue that this is exactly what a demigod should do. If you have the soul of a dragon, why should you struggle against a bandit? Why shouldn't you be able to craft armor that makes you invincible? This perk validates the power fantasy. It allows the player to feel the progression from a prisoner in rags to a being of mythic power. Consider the specific utility for the Stealth Archer, Section 4. You can enchant a ring with Fortify Archery and Fortify Sneak, using the Twin Souls perk later, but starting with one now. Suddenly your bow does massive damage, and you are invisible. Or consider the Mage. You can enchant your gear with Fortify Destruction to reduce the magicka cost of spells. With Insightful Enchanter, you can easily reach 100% cost reduction. You can cast Fireball infinitely. You become a literal artillery cannon with unlimited ammo. This perk is the difference between a mage who has to run away to recharge and a mage who stands their ground and burns the world. The visual component of this is subtle but satisfying. You spend hours at the table swapping out Grand Soul gems, filled with mammoth souls usually, renaming your items: Ring of the Sniper, Necklace of the Forge, Boots of the Cat. You are building a wardrobe of power. When you finally equip the full set, you check your active effects menu. The list is long, the numbers are green. You feel a sense of completion. You have engineered your own success. But let's not forget the economy again, Section 9. An item enchanted with Fortify Sneak or Fortify Carry Weight is worth exponentially more than a standard enchanted item. With Insightful Enchanter, the magnitude of the enchantment is higher, which means the value is higher. You're now crafting jewellery that is worth more than the merchants can afford, or even with your investment. You're creating heirlooms. There is also a defensive application. The magic resistance cap in Skyrim is 85%. You can't reach this easily with just racial bonuses or the Lord Stone. You need gear. With Insightful Enchanter, you can craft a necklace and a shield that grant hefty chunks of magic resistance. You can walk into a dragon's fire breath and take a warm bath instead of burning to death. You can laugh at enemy mages as their lightning bolts tickle you. This perk allows you to ignore mechanics that used to kill you. However, despite all this power, there is a vulnerability. You can hit hard, you can sneak, and you can tank magic. But your health bar is still a finite resource, and potions have a cooldown, or at least an animation delay if you aren't spamming the menu. You rely on potions to stay alive in the heat of battle, but standard potions are inefficient. A potion of minor healing heals 25 points. When you have 500 health, that's a drop in the bucket. You need your chemistry to be as potent as your enchantments. You need to ensure that when you drink a vial, it actually matters. The alchemy table calls to you again. You have the Alchemist perk, section 5. But that was just the beginning. You need to specialize. You need to tell the game that you are a healer, not just a poisoner. You need to unlock the secret of the physician. You stand in the flickering light of the alchemy lab, surrounded by the spoils of your journey. You are wearing your newly enchanted armor, gleaming with the Fortify Health and Fortify One-Handed enchantments you crafted with the Insightful Enchanter perk. You feel powerful, you look powerful, but deep down, you know the truth. You are still mortal. A Draugr Deathlord's ebony arrow can still pierce that armor. A dragon's fire breath can still boil you alive inside your plate mail. When the health bar drops into the red, that terrifying, pulsating low health warning that makes every gamer's heart skip a beat, you instinctively reach for a potion. You chug a potion of minor healing you found in a barrel 3 weeks ago. The bar moves a millimeter. You chug another and another. You do your panic-drinking, frantic sips of weak medicine while a giant winds up to send you into orbit. It is inefficient. It is desperate. It is why the 11th essential star in our constellation is Physician. Located at level 20 in the alchemy tree, right after the initial alchemist ranks, the Physician perk is the specialization that separates the hobbyist brewer from the field medic. Its effect is precise and vital. Potions you mix that restore health, magicka, or stamina are 25% more powerful. This might seem redundant after the base alchemist perk, but the core in-game fact here is one of categorization. The alchemy tree splits after this perk. To the left you have Poisoner for the assassins, to the right you have Benefactor for the buffers, but everyone, warrior, mage, or thief, needs Physician. It is the bottleneck perk that forces you to acknowledge that your primary job as an alchemist is staying alive. Without the Physician perk, your homemade healing potions often lag behind the difficulty curve. By level 20, enemies are hitting for 50, 100, or even 150 damage per swing. A standard potion that heals 25 points is a joke. It's a band-aid on an amputation. With the Physician perk combined with your existing alchemist ranks, section 5, and any Fortify alchemy gear you made, section 10, you can brew a potion of restore health using wheat and blue mountain flour that heals for 80, 90, or 100 plus points instantly. This changes the math of combat. Instead of needing to pause the game and drink 10 vials, breaking the flow of the fight, you drink 1. You are back in the fight instantly. It allows for a much more aggressive playstyle. Let's talk about the ingredients. This brings us to a wonderfully grotesque obscure lore tidbit regarding the biology of Skyrim. To trigger the restore health effect, you often mix blue mountain flowers with wheat, or butterfly wings, or a giant's toe. But have you ever considered why these things heal you? In real-world herbalism, willow bark reduces pain because it contains salicylic acid. In Tamriel, the logic is magical, or sympathetic. Wheat represents the harvest, life, and sustenance. The blue mountain flower absorbs the magicka of the high altitudes. But the giant's toe? Lore suggests that giants are distant cousins of the Nords, or at least share the Atmaran ancestry, and their immense vitality is concentrated in their extremities. When you brew a toe, You're distilling the essence of being huge and tough into a liquid form. The Physician perk represents your character understanding how to extract that specific vital essence without getting the toe jam flavour. This perk also has a profound synergy with our earlier friend Respite as Section 7. Remember how healing spells also restore stamina? Well, sadly, potions of healing do not automatically restore stamina unless you mix in a specific ingredient like charred skeever hide. However, the Physician perk boosts restore stamina potions as well. This means your Mudcrab Chitin plus charred skeever hide brew now restores a massive chunk of stamina. You can sprint forever. You can power attack forever. You're a machine that runs on bug shells and rat skin. The community has a long-standing debate about potion spamming versus food spamming. We mentioned the vegetable soup earlier, but the sheer volume of cheese wheels consumed in Skyrim is a meme for a reason. Hold on, dragon. Let me eat 45 wheels of Idot cheese? It's ridiculous. It breaks immersion. The Physician perk is the answer to the cheese wheel problem. It allows you to roleplay a serious adventurer who carries a few potent corked vials rather than a walking grocery store. A single high-quality potion feels like a magical artifact. Chugging a sack of potatoes feels like a glitch. Furthermore, Physician is the prerequisite for Benefactor, which is the perk that boosts Fortify potions, like Fortify Enchanting or Smithing. While we are focusing on the essential first perks, Physician is the gatekeeper to the God Mode loop we discussed in Section 10. You cannot make the game-breaking gear without first learning how to make the life-saving medicine. The game forces you to prioritize survival before power. It's a subtle piece of design philosophy. You can't be a god if you're dead. Consider the economy again, Section 9. A potion that restores 100 health is worth significantly more than one that restores 25. By taking the Physician perk, you're increasing the value of your output. You're now a pharmaceutical tycoon. You can sell these high-grade potions to Arcadia or Angeline for massive profits. You're effectively selling life itself. The visual feedback of a potent potion is purely in the numbers, but the psychological effect is huge. When you open your inventory and see Potion of Ultimate Healing uncrafted, you feel safe. You know that no matter what happens, no matter if you fall off a cliff or get shouted at by a Draugr Deathlord, you have a reset button. It removes the fear of death. It allows you to explore those dangerous high-level areas like Labyrinthian or Skuldafn without dread. Let's look at the specific crafting recipe that defines this perk's utility. Blue Mountain Flour plus wheat. It creates a potion of Restore Health and Fortify Health. With the Physician perk, this potion not only heals you for a large amount, but also temporarily increases your maximum health. It is a buff and heal in one. It is arguably the most efficient potion in the game, made from ingredients you can find in almost every farm and roadside. The Physician perk maximizes this efficiency. You're turning weeds into wards, but even with the best potions and the best armor and the best weapons, you have a weakness. You are noisy. We touched on stealth in Section 4, but that was for physical sneaking. What about magical sneaking? When you cast a spell, even a healing spell or a muffle spell, it makes a sound, a loud magical shimmer or crack. Enemies hear it. If you try to heal yourself while hiding from a farmer, they will hear the restoration magic and swarm you. You cannot be a true arcane assassin or a shadow mage if your magic announces your presence like a trumpet blast. You are hiding in the shadows of a Nordic tomb. You are hurt. You drink a potion. Thanks, Physician perk. But you also want to cast invisibility to slip past the boss. You charge the spell. Afarum! The sound echoes through the hall. The Draugr wakes up. You realize that your magic is betraying you. You need to silence the arcane. You need to learn how to weave spells without vibrating the air. You need the secret of the illusion school that changes everything. You're crouched in the damp shadows of a Nordic ruin, the air thick with the dust of centuries and the smell of dried moss. Ahead of you, a Draugr Deathlord paces restlessly, his ebony bow creaking with tension. Your health is low from a trap you clumsily triggered moments ago. You have the potions we brewed in the last section, sure, but you also have a powerful close wounds spell ready in your left hand. It's the perfect solution, a quick burst of magical energy to knit your bones and refill your stamina. You raise your hand, the golden light begins to gather, and then you freeze. You remember the sound. Schwing. That distinct, resonant chime of restoration magic. It's beautiful, yes, But in this acoustic chamber of stone, it might as well be a dinner bell for every undead horror in the crypt. You lower your hand. You're trapped by the volume of your own power. This is the mage's dilemma. You're a conduit of arcane energy, but energy vibrates, and vibration makes noise. To truly master the shadows as a magic user, you need to mute the universe. You need the 12th essential star in our constellation, quiet casting. Buried deep in the illusion tree at level 50, quiet casting is arguably the single most transformative utility perk in the entire game. Its description is deceptively modest. All spells you cast from any school of magic are silent to others. Read that again. All spells, any school. This isn't just about making your illusion spell sneakier, it's about silencing the roar of a fireball, the crack of a lightning bolt, and the chime of a healing ward. It is the perk that finally bridges the gap between the loud, bombastic wizard and the silent, deadly rogue. The core in-game fact that elevates this perk to essential status, and the one that often surprises veterans even today, is that it applies to shouts. Yes, the Thu'um, the ancient dragon language that literally reshapes reality through vocal projection, counts as a spell in the game's code. This means that with quiet casting, you can shout. Silently. It sounds like a paradox, doesn't it? A silent shout. But mechanically, it means you can use Aura Whisper to detect every enemy in a dungeon without alerting them. You can use Throw Voice to distract enemies without revealing your position. You can even, in some buggy instances, blast a bandit off a cliff with unrelenting force, and his friends won't immediately pinpoint your location because the sound event didn't register at your coordinates. You become a ventriloquist of doom. Let's talk about the grind to get here. You can't just buy this perk, you have to earn it. And the most common way players do this is through the Muffle spam. It is a rite of passage in the Skyrim community. You obtain the Muffle spell tome, usually from Farengar in Whiterun or Drevis Neilaren at the college. Then you walk around Skyrim casting it over and over again. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. It is a tedious, repetitive rhythm that drives your roommates or family members crazy if you're playing without headphones. But it works. Illusion levels up incredibly fast with Muffle, because the game registers it as successfully affecting the player every single time. It's a loophole in the experience system that allows you to power level to 50 illusion in about 20 minutes of focused casting. Is it immersive? Maybe not. Is it effective? Absolutely. It represents the Dragonborn practicing their scales before the concert, but once you have it, the gameplay shifts dramatically. Imagine the synergy with our previous perks. You have the stealth perk from section 4 keeping you hidden visually. Now, with quiet casting, you are hidden logically. You can cast invisibility, an expert illusion spell, right in front of an enemy's face. Without the perk, the sound of casting invisibility alerts them. They swing at the noise and they hit you. With the perk, you simply vanish. One moment you're there, the next you're air. It allows you to reset any fight instantly. You can stab a bandit, cast invisibility, move 10 feet, and stab him again. He will spin in circles, swinging at ghosts, terrified and confused. You're gaslighting the AI. There is a fascinating obscure lore tidbit regarding the nature of silence in Tamriel. The Sigic Order, the ancient monastic order of mages based on the Isle of Artaeum, practices a form of magic that emphasizes the old way, or the manipulation of natural forces through deep concentration and minimal interference. Quiet casting feels like a technique borrowed from their playbook. In the book The Old Ways, it is suggested that true mastery of magic is not about force, but about suggestion. You're suggesting to the universe that a fireball should exist here, without the universe screaming about it. It implies a level of control over the tones of reality, the same tonal architecture used by the Dwemer, where you're dampening the acoustic footprint of your will. You're editing the sound file of reality in real time. The community debate around illusion magic is often binary. It's either useless or overpowered. On one hand, illusion spells have level caps. A basic fury spell won't work on a high-level bandit unless you dual cast it or take other perks. This leads some players to abandon the tree entirely. On the other hand, quiet casting is the ultimate enabler for the pacifist run. There are players who have completed the entire game without directly killing a single enemy, relying entirely on quiet casting to sneak past bosses or using fury to make enemies kill each other. Why get your hands dirty, they ask. Let the bandits sort it out among themselves. This perk turns the game into a chaotic simulation where you are the director sitting in a chair watching the actors destroy the set. Consider the Arcane trickster archetype. You're in a bandit camp. You cast Mage Light silently and stick it to a patrolling guard. He is now a glowing beacon in the night. His friends panic. "What is that magic?" they yell. You chuckle from the shadows. You cast Fury on the strongest warrior. He draws his axe and decapitates the archer next to him. Chaos ensues. You haven't drawn a weapon. You haven't taken a hit. You're simply orchestrating a tragedy. This is the power of quiet casting. It removes you from the equation of violence while allowing you to control the result. And let's not forget the synergy with Restoration, Section 2 and 7. We mentioned the Mage's Dilemma at the start. With quiet casting, that dilemma is solved. You can hide in a dark corner, cast Close Wounds to heal yourself to full health, and the enemy searching for you hears nothing. You can cast Circle of Protection to create a safe zone against undead without alerting the entire dungeon. It turns the panic heal into a tactical reset. You're no longer punished for tending to your wounds. The audio design of this perk is, ironically, the absence of design. When you unlock it, the sound effects of your spells don't actually change for you, the player. You still hear the whoosh and the crackle. But the game's internal logic treats the volume as 0. It creates a strange disconnect where you feel like you're making a racket, but the world ignores you. It reinforces the idea that the sound is in your head, a psychic feedback of the magicka flowing through you, while the physical air remains undisturbed. It's a personal symphony only you can hear. There is also a defensive utility against other mages. If you are fighting a wizard duel, casting a ward spell usually signals your intent. The enemy mage sees the ward and switches tactics. With quiet casting, your ward goes up silently, though still visibly. In the chaos of particle effects and lighting, the lack of an audio cue can sometimes delay the enemy AI's reaction, or at least it feels that way. You feel quicker, more slippery. Let's look at the economy of magicka. Illusion spells are expensive. Invisibility costs a lot of blue bar. Mayhem, the master level spell, costs a fortune. But because quiet casting allows you to pick your moments, you never waste a spell. You don't cast Fear and have it fail because the enemy heard you charging it and interrupted you with an arrow. You cast it from safety. Efficiency is the name of the game. However, there is a lingering vulnerability. You have silenced your own output. You have muffled your boots and your fireballs. You can heal in peace, but you cannot silence the enemy. A dragon's shout is still deafening. A mage's lightning bolt still screams as it tears through the air towards you, and most importantly, those magical attacks hurt. Your heavy steel armor, Section 1, stops arrows and swords, but it does nothing against a stream of fire or a spike of ice. You are a tank against physical damage, but you're made of paper when it comes to the arcane. You step out of the shadows, confident in your invisibility, only to step on a rune trap you didn't see. Boom! Fire engulfs you. Your health evaporates. You realize that hiding is not enough. You need to be able to walk through the fire. You need to toughen your skin against the elements themselves. You need to unlock the passive resistance that turns a dragon's breath into a warm breeze. The fire from the rune trap fades, leaving the smell of singed hair and the stinging realization that your physical armor is useless against magic. You stand up, chugging a potion, thanks, physician perk, and dust off your scorched knees. A shadow passes overhead, a blood dragon, its scales shimmering like rubies in the sun. It opens its maw, and a torrent of Yoltor Shul, fire inferno sun, engulfs the world. You raise your shield, but the heat passes right through the steel, boiling the marrow in your bones. You realize that to survive in Skyrim you cannot just be a wall of iron. You must be a wall of will. You need to harden your very existence against the elements. You need the 13th essential star in our constellation, magic resistance. Hidden halfway up the alteration tree, requiring skill levels of 30, 50, and 70 for its 3 ranks. Magic resistance is the perk that transforms you from a warrior into a juggernaut. Its effect is simple. It blocks a percentage of all hostile magic. At rank 3, it provides a flat 30% reduction. When combined with the racial bonus of a Breton, 25%, or the Lord Stone, 25%, you are looking at a character who ignores more than half of every fireball, ice spike, and lightning bolt thrown their way. The core in-game fact that makes this perk non-negotiable is the armor rating trap. Most players assume that having an armor rating of 600 makes them invincible. It does, against swords and arrows. But against magic, your armor rating is effectively 0. A bandit with an iron dagger might tickle you, but a novice necromancer with frostbite can kill you in seconds. Magic resistance is the only stat that mitigates this damage directly, aside from specific elemental resistances. It is the missing half of your defense. Without it, you're walking into the endgame with a kick me sign on your back for every dragon priest in the province. But getting there requires you to engage with the School of Alteration, often considered the boring cousin of destruction and restoration. Alteration is the magic of utility. It's about lighting candles, candlelight, finding keys, telekinesis, and most importantly hardening your skin. The grind to unlock magic resistance usually involves the Detect Life spam in Whiterun Market, or the telekinesis fast travel exploit. But the intended path, casting oak flesh or stone flesh before every fight, teaches you a valuable lesson. Preparation is survival. You are literally altering the physical properties of your skin to mimic wood or stone. You're rejecting the fragility of flesh. Let's dive into the obscure lore of this resistance. In the book Reality and Other Falsehoods, alteration is described as the art of convincing the universe that it is wrong. When you cast a flesh spell or rely on magic resistance, you are asserting a reality where fire does not burn you and ice does not freeze you. It is a battle of wills between the caster and the cosmos. The magic resistance perk represents a permanent hardening of this will. You aren't just casting a spell, you have fundamentally altered your metaphysical density. The magicka that makes up your soul is now thicker, acting as a natural insulator against the raw energy of Aetherius. The community debate around this perk centers on the cap. Magic resistance is capped at 85%. You can never be fully immune to magic through resistance alone. Spell absorption is a different mechanic that offers 100% immunity but is harder to maintain. Min-maxers argue about the most efficient way to hit that 85% cap. Is it better to spend 3 perk points here, or to complete the Book of Love quest for the Temple of Mara, which gives a permanent 15% passive bonus? The answer usually is do both. By taking the perk, the Mara bonus and the Lord Stone, a Breton character hits the cap naked. A non-Breton needs a bit of gear. But the consensus is clear. If you don't hit at least 50% magic resistance, you are playing on hard mode, regardless of your difficulty setting. Consider the dragon fight scenario again. With 0% resistance, a dragon's breath attack deals roughly 50 damage per second. You die in about 4 seconds. With the magic resistance perk, 30%, and perhaps a ring of fire resistance you crafted, section 10, you might reduce that damage by 60 to 70%. Suddenly the fire deals 15 damage per second. You can stand in the flames, laughing, swinging your sword at the dragon's snout. You feel like a Terminator. You have negated the primary threat of the game's flagship monsters. There is also a fascinating interaction with traps. Magical traps, runes, elemental walls, and even the poison gas in Dwemer Ruins count as magical damage. With the magic resistance perk, you can walk through a hallway of swinging blades, armor rating, and fire jets, magic resistance, with impunity. You become an unstoppable force. The dungeon itself cannot hurt you. This is particularly satisfying in places like Labyrinthian, where the skeletal dragon and the spectral Draugr spam frost magic that drains your stamina. With this perk, their icy wind becomes a gentle breeze. The visual feedback for magic resistance is, unfortunately, non-existent. There is no glowing shield, unless you cast a ward, no shimmer of energy. You just take less damage. The health bar moves slower, but the feeling of power is immense. When a master vampire casts Thunderbolt at you, a spell that sounds like a cannon firing, and your health bar barely flinches, you feel a sense of superiority that no sword can provide. You have evolved beyond the need to dodge. Let's look at the synergy with your other skills. Steelsmithing/arcane blacksmith. Your physical armor handles the physical hits. Magic resistance handles the rest. You're now a complete tank. Novice restoration/respite. When you do take damage, it's manageable. A quick fast healing tops you off. You aren't panic healing anymore, you are maintenance healing. Enchanter, insightful Enchanter. You can enchant your shield with resist magic to stack with this perk. You can create a specialized anti-mage set of gear. Merchant. You can buy the expensive ebony flesh tomes from Tolfdir at the college once your skill is high enough, further boosting your physical defense to the cap. This perk also encourages you to hunt for the Agent of Mara passive. It sends you on a pilgrimage of love across Skyrim, helping star-crossed lovers in Ivarstead, calm a ghost in Yuka's monument, and reunite a couple in Markarth. It's a surprisingly tender questline for a Dragonborn who spends most of their time decapitating bandits. But the reward, that permanent plus 15% magic resistance, stacks perfectly with this perk. It adds a narrative layer to your build. The power of love literally protects you from fire. However, as you stand there, unburnt and unbroken, looting the dragon's corpse, you encounter the most persistent, undefeated enemy in the entire Elder Scrolls franchise. It's not Alduin, it's not Miraak, it's gravity. Specifically, the gravity of all the junk you are carrying. You pick up a dragon bone, 15 weight. You pick up a dragon scale, 10 weight. You grab the dragon's gold, and then, crunch. Your character slows to a crawl. You're carrying too much to be able to run. The dreaded, over-encumbered walk. The slow, agonizing shuffle of greed. You check your inventory. It's full of potions, spare armor, ingredients, and the heavy bones of your enemies. You don't want to drop anything. It's all valuable. You need a way to carry the world on your shoulders. You need to expand the inventory of your very soul. You need to delve into the pockets of the thief to find the secret of the pack mule. You look at your backpack. It's bursting at the seams. You look at the distant city of Whiterun. It's a long, slow walk unless you can find a way to cheat the laws of physics one more time. You need extra pockets. You're standing over the skeletal remains of the blood dragon you just humiliated with your magic resistance. The adrenaline is fading, replaced by the primitive lizard brain desire that drives every adventurer in Tamriel, the loot impulse. You see the dragon bones, weight 15. You see the dragon scales, weight 10. You see an ebony shield lying nearby, weight 14. You grab them all, and then the universe punishes you. Crunch. Your movement speed drops from a heroic sprint to a tragic, over-encumbered shuffle. You are carrying too much to be able to run. It is the walk of shame. You are miles from Whiterun, miles from a horse, and you refuse to drop a single bone because, well, you earned it. This is the Hoarder's curse. And the only cure, short of chugging a strength potion every 60 seconds, is the 14th essential star in our constellation: extra pockets. It is arguably the strangest placement for a survival perk in the entire game. Buried halfway up the pickpocket tree at level 50, extra pockets feels like it belongs in the stamina or heavy armor tree. But no, to learn the secret of carrying the world on your back, you must first learn to steal the sweet rolls from your neighbour's pockets. The perk description is the holy grail for loot goblins. Carrying capacity is increased by 100. Let's put that number in perspective. To gain 100 points of carry weight naturally, you would need to invest into stamina for 10 consecutive level ups. That is 10 levels where you ignored health or magicka. Extra pockets gives you that entire decade of physical training for the low cost of 3 perk points. It is, mathematically, one of the most efficient perks in the game. It transforms your character from a vagrant with a bindle into a heavy freight transport. The core in-game fact that makes this perk essential is the dragon bone economy. In the mid to late game, your primary source of income and high-end crafting materials comes from dragons. But dragon bones are absurdly heavy. A single dragon drops enough weight to over-encumber a standard mage build instantly. Without extra pockets, you're forced to leave thousands of gold pieces rotting in the tundra, or fast travel back and forth like a confused yo-yo. With extra pockets, you can slay 3 dragons, strip them bare, and still have room for a few cheese wheels on the way home. It effectively increases your profit per hour by allowing you to stay in the field longer. But why pickpocket? The obscure lore implication here is delightful. It suggests that extra pockets isn't about physical strength, it's about spatial management. It's the TARDIS principle. A master thief knows how to fold a cloak so it takes up half the space. They know how to distribute weight across their body so a heavy coin purse doesn't swing and throw them off balance. They know where to sew hidden pouches into the lining of their armor. When you take this perk, you aren't getting stronger. you are becoming a master of logistics. You're learning the Tetris of inventory management. The grind to get here is a unique community ritual. Most players ignore pickpocket because they play as honourable warriors or distant mages. But to get extra pockets, you have to break the law. The fastest way, the quick save/quick load method in Riften. You crouch behind a guard, save the game, try to steal his arrows, and if you fail, you reload. It's a metagame mechanic that breaks the fourth wall, turning the Dragonborn into a time-travelling kleptomaniac. Alternatively, you can join the Thieves Guild and practice on the endless supply of wealthy citizens in solitude. There is a perverse joy in stripping a Jarl's court wizard of his jewellery, just to learn how to carry more dragon bones. There is also a synergy with the Stealth, Section 4, and Alchemy, Section 5 perks. If you're sneaking, you are already in position to pick pockets, and if you are brewing potions, you can create fortified pickpocket elixirs to make the levelling process smoother. It integrates the thief playstyle into even the most noble paladin build, simply out of necessity. I swear, officer, I only stole your ring so I could carry more medicine to the orphanage. Consider the dungeon diver scenario. You're deep in a Dwemer ruin. You find a room full of Dwemer struts, weight 20, solid Dwemer metal, weight 25, and bent Dwemer scrap metal, weight 2. These are the best items for smelting into dwarven ingots to level your smithing, Section 1. Without extra pockets, you pick up 3 struts and you're full. You leave behind hundreds of potential ingots. With extra pockets, you can strip the room clean. You walk out of Mzulft carrying the equivalent of a small tank in raw metal. You are an industrial vacuum cleaner. The psychological relief of this perk cannot be overstated. The inventory anxiety, the constant checking of current weight 295 over 300, vanishes. You stop micromanaging. You stop debating whether to drop a potion of minor stamina to pick up a garnet. You just take it all. It frees up mental bandwidth. You can focus on the adventure, on the scenery, on the combat, rather than on the math of encumbrance. And let's not forget the merchant perk, Section 9. You can sell anything to anyone. Extra pockets ensures you have everything to sell. You arrive in town not just with the cream of the crop, but with the entire harvest. You sell the dragon bones to the alchemist, the enchanted armour to the blacksmith, and the gems to the general goods merchant. You empty your massive 450 plus carry weight inventory, and your gold count skyrockets. You are maximising the efficiency of your trade route. However, there is a physical limit to this freedom. You can carry 500 pounds of gear, yes, but if you're wearing heavy armour, Daedric, Dragonplate, or even simple steel, the armour itself weighs a ton. A full set of Daedric armour weighs 50 units. That's 10% of your new capacity gone just for the privilege of not dying. And worse, wearing heavy armour slows down your movement speed and drains your stamina faster when you sprint. You are a tank, but you move like a tank. You're strong, but you're sluggish. You want to have your cake and eat it too. You want the protection of a fortress, but the mobility of a dancer. You want the armour to be there when you get hit, but to disappear when you are running. You need to master the final physical discipline. You need to condition your body until the steel feels like silk. You're standing in the middle of the Whiterun tundra, the wind whipping through the grass, carrying the scent of snow and mammoth cheese. You're a walking fortress. You're clad in a full set of Daedric armour, the black metal pulsing with red veins of Daedric energy. You have the extra pockets perk from our last section, so your inventory is bursting with dragon bones and enchanted weaponry. You are rich, powerful, and magically resistant. But there is one final nagging shackle holding you back: gravity. Despite your strength, that Daedric armour weighs a combined total of 50 units. That is 50 pounds of jagged metal dragging you down every second. It eats into your carry weight, effectively negating half the benefit of your extra pockets. Worse, it slows your movement speed. You run like a brontosaurus in molasses. Your stamina drains rapidly when you sprint. You are a tank, yes, but you are a slow, lumbering target. To truly ascend, to become the ultimate predator of Skyrim, you need to shed this weight without shedding the protection. You need to make the steel feel like silk. You need the 15th and final star in our constellation: conditioning. Located at level 70 in the heavy armour tree, conditioning is the perk that breaks the laws of physics for the sake of gameplay flow. Its description is the stuff of dreams for any warrior. Heavy armour weighs nothing and doesn't slow you down when worn. Let that sink in. Weighs nothing. The core in-game fact here is a complete nullification of the heavy armor penalty. When you unlock this perk, your equipped cuirass, helmet, gauntlets, and boots, objects that visually look like they weigh as much as a small car, suddenly have a weight of 0 in your inventory calculations. It instantly frees up 50 to 60 units of carry weight. It is like taking off a heavy backpack that you've been wearing for 80 hours of gameplay. But the second part is even more critical. It doesn't slow you down. Normally, heavy armor applies a movement speed penalty. You're physically slower than a thief in leather. With conditioning, that penalty vanishes. You sprint with the same velocity as a naked character. You're a freight train moving at the speed of a cheetah. The grind to get here is, admittedly, masochistic. To reach level 70 in heavy armor, you have to get hit. A lot. You have to stand there and let mudcrabs pinch you, let giants club you, and let bandits stab you, all while frantically casting restoration spells, section 2, to stay alive. It is a training montage of pain. But the lore implications of this suffering are profound. In the Elder Scrolls universe, conditioning isn't just about physical fitness, it is about attunement. The armor becomes a second skin. The Imperial Legionnaires drill for years to achieve this, marching across Cyrodiil in full plate until the metal feels like an extension of their own body. The orcs of the strongholds are born into this, living and dying in steel until they don't know where their skin ends and the armor begins. When you take this perk, you're achieving a level of martial symbiosis where the armor moves with you, not on you. The community debate surrounding conditioning is almost always framed against the Steed Stone. The Steed Stone, one of the 13 standing stones located near Solitude, grants the exact same effect, weightless armor and plus 100 carry weight. Many players argue, why waste a perk point on conditioning when I can just touch the stone? The answer lies in the opportunity cost. If you use the Steed Stone, you cannot use the Lord Stone, plus 50 armor, plus 25% magic resist, or the Atronach Stone, 50% spell absorption. By taking the conditioning perk, you free up your standing stone slot for defensive or offensive buffs that cannot be replicated elsewhere. Conditioning allows you to have the mobility of the steed and the tankiness of the Lord. It is the min-maxer's choice. It allows you to have your cake, mobility, and eat it too, magic resistance. Consider the sensory experience of this perk. Before conditioning, sprinting in heavy armor is a loud, clanking, stamina-draining affair. The screen shakes, the stamina bar plummets, you feel heavy. After conditioning, the audio remains the same, the satisfying clunk, clunk, clunk of heavy boots. But the feeling is disconnected from the physics. You glide. You can sprint from Whiterun to Rorikstead without stopping, especially with the Respite perk from Section 7. You can chase down deer. You can outrun bears. There is a cognitive dissonance to seeing a character in bulky, spiky armor moving with such fluidity, but it is an empowering dissonance. You feel like a force of nature. This perk also completes the inventory Tetris we started with extra pockets, Section 14. With conditioning, your effective carry weight skyrockets. If you have 300 base carry weight plus 100 from extra pockets, and you save 50 from your armor being weightless, you effectively have 450 units of space for loot. You can clear out an entire dwarven ruin, scrap metal, struts, heavy Falmer armor and all, in a single trip. You become the ultimate vacuum of Tamriel. Nothing is left behind. Let's look at the combat implications. Mobility is defense. In the early game, a heavy armor warrior has to tank hits because they can't dodge. With conditioning, you can sidestep. You can dance around a giant's club. You can weave in and out of a dragon's bite range. It transforms the heavy armor playstyle from statue to duelist. You can play aggressively, closing the gap on archers and mages before they can get a second shot off. You're a heat-seeking missile made of ebony. Furthermore, there is a synergy with smithing, Section 1 and 8. Because you're crafting your own armor and improving it to legendary quality, it is usually heavier than standard gear. Dragonbone is the heaviest material. Conditioning negates the downside of using the best materials. You don't have to settle for glass or elven armor just to save weight. You can wear the bones of dragons, the heaviest substance in the game, and treat it like a t-shirt. It validates your investment in the top-tier smithing perks. The visual of a fully conditioned Dragonborn is terrifying to the NPCs of Skyrim. Imagine being a bandit. You see a figure approaching in armour made from the blood of a Daedra. You expect them to be slow. You draw your bow, thinking you have time. Then, the figure sprints at you with Olympic speed, closing 50 yards in seconds, weapon raised, moving with unnatural grace. It is the stuff of nightmares. It creates a shock and awe factor that fits the narrative of the Dragonborn perfectly. You are not just a warrior, you are a supernatural entity. And let's reflect on the journey that led here. We started with steel smithing, forging our first crude protection. We learned restoration to heal the wounds that armour couldn't stop. We learned haggling and merchant to fund our crusade. We mastered enchanting and alchemy to break the limits of our mortal form. We picked up stealth and quiet casting to choose our battles. We hardened our skin with magic resistance and expanded our pockets with extra pockets. And now, with conditioning, we have removed the final barrier. We have removed the weight of the world itself. You stand at the peak of the throat of the world. Looking down at the province you have conquered, you're wearing the best armour, wielding the best weapon, protected by the strongest magic and carrying the wealth of kings. You can run forever. You can carry anything. You can survive anything. The wind howls around you, but you don't feel the cold. You don't feel the weight. You feel only the limitless potential of the Dovahkiin. The constellation is complete. 15 stars burning bright in the skill trees, connected by the lines of your choices and your survival. You have built a legend, perk by perk, turning a prisoner in rags into a god in plate. And so, with your armour feeling as light as the mountain air and your pockets heavy with the treasures of a conquered land, the time has come to stop running. The sprint is over. The dragons have retreated to their peaks, and the bandits have scattered into the shadows. You have forged the steel, mastered the magic, and bent the very laws of Skyrim to your will. But even the Dragonborn, with all their stamina and strength, eventually seeks the warmth of a hearth. Imagine your character walking slowly now, the urgency of the quest fading with the setting sun. You step into the Candlehearth Hall, or perhaps the Villamere Inn. The heavy oak door closes behind you, shutting out the howling wind and the biting frost. The air inside is thick with the scent of roasted meat, dried herbs, and the comforting, resinous smell of burning pine. The fire in the centre of the room is dying down to a bed of glowing embers, casting long, dancing shadows against the stone walls. You unbuckle that weightless armour piece by piece, setting it aside. You're safe here. The walls are thick, the guards are patrolling outside, and your inventory is secure. Let the noise of the world drift away. The clang of the blacksmith's hammer, the roar of the frost troll, the sharp crackle of destruction magic. Let them all soften into a distant rhythmic hum. You have prepared for everything. You have the potions to heal, the enchantments to protect, and the wealth to rest easy. There is nothing left to fight tonight. The skill trees are silent stars in a dark sky watching over you. Your breathing slows, matching the gentle pulse of the firelight. The map is closed. The quest log is empty for the moment. The music swells with those deep resonant cellos of the night theme, pulling you down into a deep, dreamless slumber. You are warm, you are safe, you are ready to rest. Sweet dreams.